It is Monday, August 9th. This is the Guilford Board of Education. There is a huge crowd here tonight. We thank you all for coming. I see you all have masks, which is terrific. It is not only respectful of the in-school acknowledgement of masks that we have been following all summer, but I'm guessing, as you know, our first selectman has now required masking in all of our public buildings in town. I will just note, that each Board of Ed member, when they are speaking, or Dr. Freeman, we will take our mask off. That's in order for all of you to hear us. We want to make sure that you're hearing us, and then we will put it back on. All right, so welcome tonight to the Guilford Board of Education meeting, again, August 9th. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I welcome you to join us in that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. The first order of business is action on the minutes of July 12th. Is there a motion to approve the July 12th meeting minutes? All right, I've heard a motion and a second. Are there any comments or corrections on these minutes? I do have a couple of corrections, if I may. This is 10 pages of minutes. So the fact that there is a request for a correction is not surprising at all. Terry is doing a magnificent job keeping up with us. On page 2, the very first paragraph, the last sentence of that paragraph states that she has also submitted a petition. The correction is that noted that she has a petition to submit. We have not received a petition. The second correction I would like to suggest on that page is under number 5, the review and approval of expenditures. The second paragraph indicates both that Mr. Del Ventura, I'm sorry, that the section notes that Mr. Del Ventura approved the minutes, but the second paragraph notes Joe Galino, and I think that needs to be corrected to John Del Ventura. Yeah, okay, thank you. On page 4, this is, I think, a very small correction under 9.4. The last paragraph, I just want to align the bid amount as stated above it, which I think is $102,271.60. Mm-hmm. On page 8, on the paragraph that starts Dr. Balistraci, encouraged, instead of all community members, please, any parent to talk to their students' teachers, and then add if they have questions about work being done in the classroom, because that is an appropriate action for a parent. And then the last sentence, Mr. Maizano agreed to meet, to change that to suggested a meeting, because there was no meeting identified. Sorry, 2 more. Thank you for your patience. On page 9, 4th paragraph down, Dr. Balistraci noted that if, it should say, any child is attacked, or bullied, this should be dealt with by the administration, will be taken seriously, and will not be tolerated. Obviously, if any of my colleagues are disagreeing with
No,
anything.
yes, well done.
Okay. And then finally, on page 10, the last paragraph about halfway through, the initiative is not meant to put any individual down, but is to recognize all students regardless of race, religion, or sexual identity, which is, I believe, what was said at the meeting. Thank you. That was a long list. Any other corrections noted by you, my colleagues? All right. So then we have a motion and a second. I'm going to ask to call a vote on the meeting minutes as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so that is unanimous. Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is public forum for topics on the board agenda only. I will just note the reason for that caveat that comes at this point in the agenda. Per state statute, we as a Board of Ed always have to post our meeting agendas ahead of time so that the community knows what we are going to discuss. So that while there is an opportunity at the end of the meeting for the public to ask a question or make a comment, the board is really only supposed to be discussing matters on the agenda. So that if there's a member of the public here tonight who would like to make a comment about anything on the agenda, they are welcome to come up and do so now. I ask that if you do, you come up and state your name and your address for the record. There is a pad on the podium here that will also allow you to write it down. It helps a lot with taking meeting minutes. So again, is there anyone who would like to address the board about topics on the agenda at this time? All right, seeing none, we're going to go on to the next item, which is review and approval expenditures for the month of July 2021. This will actually come in two parts. There will be review of the July expenditures as they relate to the final financial reports for 2020-2021 academic year, and then likewise July financials as they relate to the 2021-2022 year. Getting all my numbers confused. So Mr. Sands, I'm going to turn this over to you now, please.
Okay. Well, let's turn our attention first to the July financials as it relates to the fiscal year that just ended, which is the fiscal year of 2020-2021. Our fiscal year ends on June 30th. So July of the following month is usually our cleanup, and we use that time to go after vendors who have not submitted things, have not submitted paperwork and things of that sort. Expenditures for the month were $7,902.73, and expenditures and encumbrances through the end of July were 99.93% of the budget as compared to 99.58% last year. In July of this year, we received a small amount, $37,000 from Medicaid. That was the only income. There were some budget transfers, which we will talk about later. And the warrants for the year, for the month, were $773,698.19. There wasn't anything particularly unusual in the warrants. As I say, this was mostly just cleanup stuff that people were slow in submitting for the fiscal year. So I would propose that we accept the results for July of 2021 as it relates to the fiscal year 2020-21.
All right, so that is a motion to approve the July 2021 financials for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Is there a second? Second. All right, any further discussion? I will note that we did discuss the financials and the warrant in some detail in our operations committee meeting just prior to this meeting. I also just want to note for the public, we did note this at our last meeting, but I would like to note again with a great deal of appreciation to the Guilford Public Schools Administration and specifically to our business director, Mrs. Trudeau, that despite many dollars spent on COVID expenses over the last year to keep our children safe and to support the kind of remote and hybrid learning that we had to do, that we managed to come into the end of the school year without having to seek a special appropriation from the Board of Finance. I will tell you as the board chair, I spent a good part of the fall and into the spring expecting, in fact, to have to do that. So it is a tremendous success financially for the administration and our business director to be landing here. That being said, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the July 2021 financials for fiscal year 2020-21, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? All right, that is unanimous. So Mr. Sands, I'm going to turn back to you for the next piece of this report.
All right, the second part also relates to the month of July 2021, but this is this covers expenditures and encumbrances for the 2021-22 fiscal year, which started July 1. The expenditures for July were $3,477,073.89. Expenditures and encumbrances, that means what we spent and what we put onto the warrants, which are things that have been approved for payment but haven't been paid, were 7.75% of the budget as compared to 7.14% in the prior year. Revenue for July was $5,478 from the pre-K program. We don't normally get much revenue when school is not in session like this. And the warrants total $1,539,531.45. The biggest item in there was a payment to the town for medical expenses for the month of July, which were almost $1 million. So that's why the warrants are at that level. So I would make a motion that we approve the financials for July of 2021 as it relates to the 2021-22 fiscal year.
All right, terrific. That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any further comments? This also was discussed in some detail in our operations committee meeting just prior to this meeting. No additional comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, so that is approved. Next item on the agenda is communications. Does any board member want to note communications received in the last month?
Madam Chair, I have a communication I'd like to include for the record.
Okay,
On top of the multiple emails we as a board receive on a daily basis for the support of the programs here at the school, I wanted to make sure that Miss Leslie Gill Long, her letter directed to me and my home address, it's entered in, expressing her full support on all that we do on behalf of all the children in Guilford. So I want to submit this for the record.
okay, thank you. Any other communications? I will note that the board in the last month has received from the Sustainable Guilford Task Force an email in support of the equity and social justice work. Likewise, we received a statement from SEPTO, which is the Special Education Parent, thank you, Parent Teacher Organization, also in support of this work. I will say to my colleagues, I need to forward them. We have received, as Mr. Galino noted, a number of emails over the last month in support of this work. We also have received a number through the Guilford Public Schools email, which comes through the website.
Yeah, I believe I forwarded 10 or a dozen emails to board members generally through Friday to this morning that were
Okay.
coming into the website address that I've been forwarding to each of you as those come in.
Okay. We have also received a couple of emails from folks who have been concerned with the approach we're taking. But again, I counted 31 in favor. And then I also just wanted to note, as we expect, as we head towards this year, we've had a couple of questions regarding masking that we are waiting to determine that. We need to get guidance from the state. And some questions about the approach in general to instruction, as there is some, I think, growing concern around the Delta variant. And the administration is paying very close attention to all the state communications and regulations that we'll have to follow as we get closer to the year. But I just wanted to mention those. All right. There are no student representatives over the summer. We will probably see them in September, October. So we will pass on that item. And I'll now turn it over to Dr. Freeman for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Bell Tracy. For the first item of my report, I'm going to ask Mr. Bowden to join us at the table to provide an update on summer hiring and vacancies that we can anticipate as the school year opens.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm first going to start off by highlighting the numbers of hires in certain department units. We have currently one opening in administrative union, which we hope to have filled tonight. Obviously, the principal at A.W. Cox. We have hired since the end of last school year 13 teachers into the district. We've hired 3 administrative assistants into the district. We've also hired 13 paraprofessionals into the district and 1 nurse, as well as 7 employees in our dining services program. So we've had a busy several weeks here. We had a number of resignations and retirements, people that have either retired or decided to find a job close to home. So we had a number of openings, as you can see. That being said, we still have some openings to fill in the remaining summer weeks. Our principals and our directors are currently in the hiring process. So as I speak to you tonight, don't assume that these will be open for long. Our hope is they will be filled by the end of this week or certainly the end of next week. But I'll highlight a few of these. Currently at A.W. Cox, we have 2 long-term sub positions that we need to fill. At Guilford High School, we have a long-term substitute position in English and a part-time French position that we need to fill. At Adams Middle School, Mr. Regan is in the process of hiring a choral music teacher for orchestra and general music, which is a combined position, and an art teacher for grades 7 and 8. Pupil Services is in the process of hiring an ELL teacher, 2 long-term subs, 1 as a special education teacher and 1 as a speech and language pathologist. And last but not least, we have an opening for a school social worker that would be a district-wide position served throughout the district. Currently, we also have 2 openings in dining service. We have 5 more carers to hire and two more nurses and 1 custodian. So even though we've done a lot since the end of the school year, we still have some work to do before we open our doors to our students. But I have every bit of confidence that we will have these positions filled with capable people and high quality people, and that they'll be ready to serve our students, our community in due time.
We'll update this report for you at your September meeting and anticipate that there will be few, if any, vacancies left at that time.
Terrific.
Any questions?
You said the dining services was 2 positions that are
Two
open?
positions yet to fill. Mrs. Calbro has filled 7 of the 9.
Got it.
She hopes to have those 2 filled this week.
And I'm going to take advantage of the crowd we have tonight and note that not on the report, but important to principals, there are also going to be lunch and recess aid positions that we will be looking to fill. And those are easiest filled when we can reach out to local community members. So I know principals will be looking to fill those positions as well.
Thank you for mentioning that. Dr. Green. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn.
I also wanted to update the board and the community. This year, as has been our tradition, we will be holding an administrative leadership retreat next week. We will be meeting in person. We will be meeting at Parmalee Farms in Killingworth, which has turned out to be a location that has really worked well. It is a completely outdoor location, but it is completely covered and protected from the elements. And so we will be having a 2-day retreat. All of our central office leadership positions, principal positions, assistant principals, building leadership, and many of our director positions will be together for those 2 days. Over the course of those 2 days, we're going to be doing some work on mindfulness, focusing on ourselves as a leadership team, and looking at some mindfulness practices to pay a little attention to our own social and emotional wellness as we begin those 2 days. And I'm really happy to say that Jill Logeroman and Maya Schofield from Cox Elementary School will be the experts coming in to help us, the school leaders, think about our own mindfulness and our own social and emotional wellness as we move into the retreat. We're also going to be having Dr. Richard Lemons from the Connecticut Center for School Change. And the real content deep dive of the retreat will be focusing on the acceleration work that Dr. Crystal has shared with you guys previously this year. Our focus next year, as we come out of this pandemic, will be to be accelerating instruction out of the pandemic, not remediating out of this pandemic. Dr. Lemons is going to be spending a significant amount of the retreat time working with our leadership team around that work. We are also part of a network through the Connecticut Center of School Change. We will be working with Dr. Lemons and 5 other school districts across the state across the year as we move beyond this pandemic. Additionally, we're going to be spending some time talking with the principals about the structures and the systems in place for the family equity liaison to be able to meet the staff in the schools and to reach out to the communities, so that the families and the students for whom that person is being brought in know how to access that person. We'll be working on those structures. We're going to be spending some time talking about COVID mitigation strategies and the nuts and bolts and logistics about how that will affect this school year moving forward. The picture and the landscape are different than they were in June when we closed schools. We're going to be opening a little differently than we anticipated even just a few weeks ago. So we're going to be spending some time having that conversation, and we're going to be wrapping that time together by looking at our portrait of the graduate work. I'm sure the board recalls that we were talking about revising our portrait of the graduate. What do we expect of the students who leave Guilford schools with 13 years of our schooling behind them? We had just begun to sort of dig into that work. We put it on hold as the pandemic hit. We will be having some folks from Battelle Ed 21 coming to join us to really begin working on reviving that portrait of the graduate work, so that as a community, we have a shared understanding of what we expect of and for our graduates as they come together, or as they finish their schooling with us. We're really excited. We're excited to be able to have this time. Last year, the retreat was tremendously impacted. We get a lot of good learning done. We get a lot of good work done for the school system by pulling those 21 core leaders together. It's the only time that we have that kind of time together. And for what it's worth, the space at Parmalee Farm is really reasonably priced. So it turns out to be a really inexpensive retreat, an opportunity to spend that time together. I also want to give an update, such as it is, about our mitigation strategies as we move into next year. Specifically, I want to be able to talk about the 2 mitigation strategies that we know will have the biggest impact and will do the most to keep our students safe next year, that being vaccines and masks. I want to talk about what that looks like for next year. And then I also want to talk about distance learning and what those realities will look like for next year. And the fact is that as we sit here tonight, we do not have final or solid guidance on any of those three items. The landscape is changing across the country and across the state. And right now, Connecticut State Department of Education, Connecticut Department of Public Health, and the governor's office are all looking at those items and promising more guidance to come out soon. So let me start with vaccines. We know that vaccines are the best front line of protection that we have. In the Guilford Public Schools and in the Guilford community, we have a really high level of complete vaccinations. I believe that our staff members in the Guilford schools are somewhere between 95 and 99% fully vaccinated at this time. We know that we've had good uptake of vaccines across the community, and we know that our students who are old enough to receive vaccines have participated, and we believe that we have a high level of vaccination among our student body as well. We hosted 2 public vaccine events here in Guilford recently. At the National Night Out that the Guilford Police Department hosted, and one that we offered on school property. And we had some of the highest rates of participation in those vaccine clinics for any school district up or down the shoreline in the shoreline region. The more students in our schools, adults in our schools, and community members who surround our children who are fully vaccinated, the more protected our schools will be, and the lower the rate of infections we will have, therefore, the lower rate of impact on instruction. And so, again, I just want to encourage all community members to consider vaccination, talk to your own doctors, and when possible, consider vaccinations for your students, because it's the best way to keep them safe as we open schools. It's a full 5-day-a-week in-person learning. That being said, the next most effective line of defense that we have are masks. At this moment, as we sit here tonight, the governor's mask mandate stays in effect until September 30th. So as of today, if nothing changed, we would have a mask mandate for all students and all adults in our schools in place until September 30th. I do not know if the governor is going to modify that mandate, and if so, we don't know in what direction the governor will modify that mandate. There have been suggestions that September 30th may be extended to a later date. There have also been suggestions that the mandate may be released and that there may be a recommendation from CDC and Connecticut DPH to continue masking in our schools. We will continue to be part of the conversation at the state level, and we will follow any mandates. And I want to suggest tonight that we will follow any recommendations around masking that come from our state medical experts. We are continuing to meet with our local medical officials and advisors. We met with our team last week. We have another meeting scheduled tomorrow. I know that parents want to know what will happen in schools for their students on September 7th. And again, what we know today is that if nothing changed, all students on September 7th would be required to wear masks because of the governor's mandate. If that changes, we will continue to get communications out to our community. That is the expectation at this moment in time. That is masked while in school. At recess, students will be allowed to remove their masks. For outside activities, students will be allowed to remove their masks. We will continue mask breaks outdoors. At this moment in time, when we think about the distance learning platform that we had in place last year, that has changed as well. The state is not requiring schools to provide a full distance learning option for families who are uncomfortable with full in-person schooling at this time. Additionally, the school district is no longer allowed to count a fully district-wide or school-wide distance learning day as a day of school. What that means at this moment in time is that if we were to call a snow day on September 8th, we would not be able to have distance learning. We would not be able to count a day of school. If we are to miss a day of school because of weather or emergency or other scheduling impacts, that day of school would need to be rescheduled at the end of the school year after the last day currently scheduled in June. Additionally, the state is suggesting that we may and should continue to provide distance learning on an individual basis, an individual as needed basis for students who may be impacted by COVID. So in our youngest grades, for our students who are younger than 12 years old, we do expect that we will have some COVID positivity in the community. If a student is unable to attend school because they are isolating related to COVID, it appears now that the state will expect us to continue to provide uninterrupted schooling through live streaming of what takes place in a classroom or another distance learning opportunity. That consideration will not apply to non-COVID related absences. So students who are absent for other illnesses or families who take vacation may not avail themselves of a distance learning platform. It would be provided on an as needed basis for COVID related absences. We believe at this time that that would include students who may continue to be identified as close contacts and therefore required to isolate, even though they themselves may not be positive for COVID. Mr. Bowden attended a meeting at 9 o'clock this morning. And again, the message was, there will be more guidance coming. There will be more specific guidance coming. We hoped that this year would be more stable, would be more predictable than last year. But with the rising number of positives related to the Delta variant, it appears that the opening of this year is going to be a moving target in some ways, the way the opening of last year was. We will continue to push communications out to the community as soon as we have certainty on these items. Again, vaccinations, masks in school, and then the distance learning opportunities that will be provided. The good news here is that we are opening 5 full days a week for in-person learning. And we learned last year that with the masking protocols in place in the schools, very little, if any, of the transmission in Guilford of the COVID virus was related to students in schools. We had very few cases where we could clearly see that one student seemed to be the source of the infection for another student. In fact, in most cases, it was clear that students who were infected brought that from outside activities. And when we isolated or quarantined those classrooms, we didn't see second or third positives popping up within that cohort of students. That told us that what we were doing in the schools was working. We firmly believe that with the prevalence of fully vaccinated folks in our schools and in this community, and with the continuation of the mask mandate, that we can have safe 5 days a week, full days of schooling in our Guilford public schools. I want to encourage everybody in town to be sure that your students are taking advantage of that opportunity. If the schools were not safe, we would not be opening them. That said, I sincerely hope that in short order, we will be able to move away from the mask requirement and see our students smiling, not behind the mask, but to be able to see our students unobstructed smiles in the classrooms. But that appears to be some way off, and we will continue to monitor the directives from Hartford and the advice and recommendations from health experts as we move forward. I wish we had a final statement. We had hoped to be issuing a very clear final statement tonight, followed by a clear communication to our parents tomorrow. But right now, all of these 3 big pieces continue to be developing, and we'll only be able to tell you once Hartford makes more final decisions and recommendations.
Excellent.
Dr. Freeman,
Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
can you comment on the other measures that we had in place last year, like the plexiglass and socially, like staying 6 feet apart? I don't know if it's too early for you to comment on that, but are we going to kind of get any of it back?
What we're hearing from the CDC, what we're hearing from state level authorities is that the most effective measures were the masks, that the masks were what made the difference. We are relaxing the strict cohorting at our elementary and Baldwin level. We will have students moving through the building again. Students last year spent most of their time in one space. They're going to be moving through the building again. We're going to be having lunches in cafeterias again. We're going to be going outside for recess. We're going to be relaxing most of those other protocols because with the high level of vaccination in our community and with the continuation of the mask mandate for however long that appears to be, those were the mitigation strategies that had the greatest impact.
Okay.
The studies are telling us that all the plexiglass we put in place didn't really do a lot. I think it helped people to feel comfortable, but it didn't seem to make a difference. We will continue to encourage people to practice proper hand hygiene and cough and sneeze hygiene. We will continue to clean high-touch surfaces as frequently as we can during the school day. We will encourage parents to keep children home if they are showing any signs or symptoms of any illness. All of that good stuff continues to be good stuff, but again, it really appears to be the vaccine uptake level and the masks that are going to be making the biggest difference for us. You may see continued plexiglass here at the high school during the lunch waves. I don't think it hurts. I think it may help some folks to feel comfortable to be sitting across from somebody while eating and unmasked, but we don't believe the science isn't showing us that it's had a big effect.
Just had a couple of questions, or one statement and one question. It just, even though we may wish it was different, I just wanted to sort of reinforce that it's the decisions for masking and everything is coming from the state and coming from the health director in Guilford, and that fortunately or unfortunately, the board does not have a lot to say about that. Is that correct?
That is, and in fact, thank you for bringing that up, Mrs. Sullivan. I have asked for a legal opinion. If the governor retreats from a mandate statewide and we end up receiving only a recommendation or a strong recommendation for CDC and DPH, a number of other superintendents I have requested a legal opinion about what would be the liability to the Board of Education if you had a recommendation from Connecticut DPH and the CDC to mask and we chose to do something other than that. I want this town and this board to be very aware of what our decision means, even if the mandate is released, but the appropriate experts are recommending a move in that direction. We need to make a decision with our eyes fully wide open. And so I assume that if the mandate is dropped, I will have that guidance for you before we as the administration and the Board of Education make a decision about that moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And do you anticipate, and I don't think you mentioned this already, but I apologize if you did, that we will have similar rules that we had as vaccination improved last year, that students and staff members that are considered close contacts that are fully vaccinated will be exempt from
Yes.
quarantine?
Thank you again. Our understanding at this time is that if we identified a positive case at the high school, we would conduct close contact surveys the way we had. We look to see who that close contact to that person could have been. Anybody identified as a possible close contact who can confirm that he or she has been vaccinated would then not be required to isolate the way somebody who cannot confirm vaccination would be required to isolate. So obviously our biggest impact is going to be at Baldwin in the elementary schools, where our student population hasn't yet had the opportunity to be vaccinated. Yeah, it's a really good point. Even though we do expect there will be some positive cases and possibly some close contacts, anybody who has been fully vaccinated should be able to be excused from isolation related to that. And again, the answer we keep getting back is as long as they wear a mask when they do return to the school setting.
And my last question, sorry, everybody. Hopefully this
Go
is some of
ahead.
your questions. I understand we're starting in masks. That mitigates some of the usual kid illnesses that go around. But the reality is there are other illnesses besides COVID circulating in our lives. And I already, I hear a bunch of people sniffles and sore throats that turn out to totally not be COVID. And so as we end in or get into the cold and flu season in the later fall, masks or not, are the nurses and the head of nursing in the schools starting to think about how they're going to address kids? Are we going to be, are they thinking about COVID, sending everyone home that has a runny nose, or is there any discussion about utilizing rapid COVID tests. That not just here, but just in, education across the state.
Yes, those are conversations. There are conversations about large-scale testing at school sites across the state. That conversation is happening at a state level. And again, I mentioned that the health team and we are meeting tomorrow, and that's some of the conversation we're having. So again, we're encouraging everybody, if your child has any symptoms of illness, to keep them home. But we do expect that we'll have to have some sort of interaction with pediatricians. And if a child has a seasonally induced allergy, we don't want that child to miss a long time frame of school. So yes, we need to have, and we will continue to have those conversations. And again, I don't have firm answers for you. We expect it to be in a slightly different place right now.
Dr. Freeman, what does the busing situation look like for families with multiple households?
So again, as we've suggested for school, we will be relaxing some of the mitigation strategies that we've been practicing on buses. One of the biggest, I think, logistical changes and most important changes for a number of families in this town is that families who maintain 2 different Guilford residences will now be able to have the buses service students at multiple addresses in Guilford again. Last year, we really restricted, we tried to maintain cohorts on the school buses as we did in the classrooms. So every child in Guilford was afforded 1 bus route, and you could ride that route only. For families in Guilford who maintain 2 addresses, that was an enormous inconvenience and impact. Again, the expectation is that as long as all students on the bus are wearing their masks, we should be able to have students cross bus cohorts. Normally this time of year, I would be out encouraging all Guilford parents to take advantage of the school buses and don't worry about dropping your kids off in the mornings, because that will ease traffic. We're not making that suggestion this year. If there are families who are still more comfortable driving their students to school rather than putting their students on the bus, that will only create more space on the buses, which will afford more social distancing for the students who do ride the buses. And we know that that will continue to create a traffic headache twice a day at each of our locations, but we think that is a reasonable trade-off. And so we're not encouraging actively students not to ride the bus, but we're not actively encouraging students to ride the bus. We are recognizing that that is a family decision, and it may take some time before bus ridership returns to what it was historically in Guilford. We understand that, and we actually agree that that's a positive move for some families.
And lastly, what does music offering look like for 5th graders and 6th graders this year?
We're going to be affording complete music offerings the way we have in the past. We will have full chorus and band and strings opportunities at Adams. Baldwin will be offering the full musical offerings that it offered in the past.
Okay.
Dr. Freeman, on the topic of busing, is the only permitted change going to be for multi-household kids, or can kids also ride a bus home with a friend or take a bus to the rec center or anything else?
We do believe that we're going to be allowing bus passes in the afternoons as well, so that students who attend after-school activities and take a bus to some of those locations or to a caretaker after school, that we should be able to accommodate that as well. Again, we believe that if our students are masked on the bus, that is the most important safety precaution, and therefore normal bus activity with masks, at least for the opening of school.
Great. So really a lot of good news. Like,
It really is. I mean, we're opening so much better than last year. It's just enormously apologetic about the need to wear the masks, but the masks are the most important protection that we have. And the masks are allowing us, with the administrative team, every time we have this conversation, I keep saying it's normal, but with masks. We really are going back to a normal calendar, a normal school day, normal activities, as long as we hold on to the masks until we see what's going to happen with this Delta variant. That doesn't mean we may not need to become more restrictive if things don't get better with the Delta variant, but we are hopeful that as younger students are able to take on the vaccine, and as we respond to this, that we should be better, not worse, as the year unfolds.
You kind of answered my question, Dr. Freeman, with normal offerings, including like after-school activities, sports, fall sports, everything is on schedule to commence.
Fall sports, yes.
Fall sports and
Fall
after-school
athletic
clubs.
program
Yeah.
for sure. Clubs and activities, I think you may continue to see some mix.
Okay.
Some of our clubs work really well in a Zoom setting, and when we spoke with the board about some of the Some of the additional supports we're going to be offering students through the ESSER grant, some of those will continue to be offered through Zoom or through a hybrid setting. So, none of our athletic programs translate well to a Zoom setting, but some of our clubs might. And in some ways, you may see us taking advantage of some of those opportunities because in some places they were good fits. But again, mostly normal with masks is what we anticipate that we will be seeing on September 7th.
Full athletic schedule.
A full schedule is what we're anticipating. Again, if things take a turn in the next 8 to 10 days, you may see something different coming out of CIAC, but right now CIAC, again, what we've learned is outdoors, especially if you're vaccinated, unmasked is really safe. The recommendations are all now coming back to, regardless of your vaccine status, mask indoors is better, but outdoors. And again, at the high school level and even at the Adams level, where our students are engaged in the most rigorous athletic programs, where we have the highest levels of student vaccination, obviously.
Thank you.
I just want to note, you just apologize for the news of masking. The public health professional in me just needs to remind people that as frustrating that masking can be, without our youngest students vaccinated, we really need to think carefully about their safety. And I think we know from a public health standpoint that kids in general are at lower risk for serious disease, but it is not zero. And as a community, we need to do what's right by the health and safety of our kids. So, and I will then transition briefly to thank our Director of Health in Guilford and our medical consultant who were very, very, very busy people with us last year. Hopefully we'll be less busy people with us this year, but we will continue to seek their guidance as well.
And both will be with us tomorrow, so their schedule hasn't slowed down yet, but we hope that it will slow down for them.
Excellent.
And Dr. Balsfasi, before I conclude my report, if I may, one item that's not on the agenda. I was not here with you when you met as a board last time. I just want to extend my sincere appreciation for the board extending my contract. I cannot tell you and this community how excited and committed I continue to do the work for 3 more years in Guilford. I have the luckiest superintendent in the city.
I guess I don't have to add anything to that.
Thank you very much.
I had an opportunity, Dr. Freeman and I were asked to speak briefly at a Connecticut Association of Boards of Education summer leadership program on Thursday. And in our introductions, I did have the opportunity to say to this group of Board of Education members across the state and superintendents across the state that we in Guilford have had Dr. Freeman with us now 10 years. That is a very long duration for a superintendent. And I cannot underscore enough what it means to have the combination of strong leadership and longevity in the stability of a school system and a district. All right. Thank you for your report. And we certainly look forward to hearing more. And as you stated, more will be communicated as soon as we know. Board agenda. We are now at 9.1, personnel items. All right, we have been asked to ratify the resignation of the following teachers. Sarah Burke, special education, 7 years of service in Guilford, Jones Elementary School. Shannon Duggan, Adams Middle School teacher, art, 1 year of service, and Julie Swanson, Cox Elementary School Spanish teacher, 4 years of service. Is there a motion to ratify the resignation of these teachers?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition or abstentions? All right. Please ratify the rescinding of the non-renewal of the following
Yeah, there's a
teacher.
lot of double negatives going
There
on
is.
If I may, Mark Severino served very well with us last year here at the high school as a Spanish teacher. Because of budget and staffing changes, his position did not exist last year. We needed to non-renew him for strictly budgetary reasons. It was not a reflection of his performance. As related to another resignation on this list, we have the opportunity to bring Mark back into that position. There's a position open and available, and we couldn't be happier than to have him returning to that position. So we're asking that you rescind his non-renewal, which will allow him to continue to serve uninterrupted and successfully here at Guilford High School.
Wonderful. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Galino, second? Sorry, yes, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. All right. And then lastly, we are asked to ratify the appointment of the following teachers. Emma Velez, special education at Leet Elementary School. Jamie Conklin, Guilford High School PE and Health. Benjamin Moore, Guilford High School social worker. Christina Tran, Adams Middle School chorus music teacher. And Catherine Jankura, Guilford High School PE and Health. Is there a motion to ratify the appointment of these 5 teachers?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that is also unanimous. Terrific. 9.2, receive for possible action, appointment of the A.W. Cox Elementary School principal. I'm going to turn over to you, Dr. Freeman.
Thank you, Dr. Ballas-Tracy. So we are very happy to be bringing candidates forward to the Board of Education tonight and requesting your approval. At the end of the school year, when we learned that we would have a vacancy at A.W. Cox Elementary School, we posted and advertised for that position. We received over 50 applications for people who expressed interest in that principal position. These were all external candidates at this time. There were no internal candidates who applied for that position. Mr. Bowden and I met in what we call snapshot interviews with approximately 20 of those candidates to extend the paper screening. We had enormously qualified candidates who were applying for this position. Considering the complexities of the COVID pandemic and considering the transitions that have occurred at Cox, we were really prioritizing experienced administrators, and we drew a number of sitting principals and really marquee school districts who were interested in moving to join the work here in Guilford Public Schools. We brought in 5 of those really qualified candidates. Those candidates met with a representative committee. That committee included Mr. Doug Hamill, representing the other principals throughout the district. Margaret Rader represented the Board of Education on that committee. Teachers from A.W. Cox, Jill Logeroman and Lindsay Fiorentino and Megan Lee all volunteered their time in the summer to be part of those interviews. And Jessica Harrington served as a parent volunteer from the Cox community to be part of those interviews. From that full day experience, we moved 2 finalists forward. Those finalists returned and were put through a performance-based interview. In that interview, we had the candidates watching instruction in one of our Guilford classrooms. It was videotaped instruction. But we had the candidates watching instruction, and we talked with them about what they saw and how they would work with that teacher, how they would respond to the instruction that they were seeing in the classroom. We provided them with a really dense piece of research around reading instruction and reading acquisition. And we grilled them on what they saw in that research. And there were some traps. There were some things in the paper that we didn't necessarily agree with. We didn't want somebody who could just read that paper and present it back to us. We were looking for folks who could really engage with that. And then we looked at some data sets. We provided some current data from this past school year, from Cox Elementary School specifically, and asked these candidates how they would engage with those data. What do those data tell them about the school that they want to lead moving forward? In that interview, Dr. Crystal and Mr. Scanziano from Central Office joined. and Mrs. Mandirano, principal at Lakes Elementary School, joined as well. I conducted reference checking around this candidate that we're about to share with you. And I need to tell you that it was some of the most positive reference checks that I have received ever. The people that I spoke to who have worked with this individual are really upset that she's leaving the current district to come to Guilford. I had one of the reference checks tell me that this will be the best hire I've ever made. Now, we've hired some really good principals. That is a very high bar, but that is also really strong recommendation. It is therefore my pleasure to introduce to the board tonight Natalie Hammond. And Natalie, if I may, I'd like to ask you to come up and join the board at the table.
Hi.
Natalie, welcome.
If you have Natalie's resume and your materials in front of you, Natalie has 4 years of principal experience at the elementary level and an elementary school that's currently more than twice the size of AW Cox. She's currently principal in Eastern Reading Region 9. And again, the folks there are really not happy that she's sitting here with all of them tonight. Natalie was an assistant principal for 3 years at the elementary level before taking that position. And prior to that, she was an elementary school teacher. We are really pleased that you're here with us tonight. Thank you for joining us. And I am very pleased to ask the board for your approval and to please help us name Natalie principal at AW Cox this evening.
Terrific. Natalie, welcome. We've certainly done this many times before. I'm not sure that anyone has had quite the audience that you have had. Welcome. We're excited to talk to you. I do want to give Mrs. Rader a moment to speak, if I may, in a second, but I also want to give you an opportunity. I don't want to put you on the spot, but give you an opportunity at any point to say a few words if you would like to as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Natalie, it's so good to see you. And thank you, Dr. Freeman, for inviting me to be part of the committee. It became very quickly apparent that you were really a shining star among our entire committee. You bring a warmth and an intention to your role as a principal and a passion that's very special and unique. I think you can empathize with what we've all been through in the last year and a half and understand the importance of resiliency and empathy and open communication. I know that's something that the Cox community was really emphasizing in their feedback and what they wanted in a principal. But most importantly, you really seemed excited and invigorated to join our community. I have 4 children go through Cox. It's a very special community for me personally. And I think if you spoke to any parent or staff at the school, they would say the same thing. And I really got the sense that you understood what you were coming into and were ready to embrace it. So I'm so thrilled you're here. I'm thrilled you've accepted the position, and never hesitate to reach out for support or guidance from anybody in this district, because you're entering a really wonderful community.
Thank you so much. Very kind words. Thank you for having me. And I feel like this is like my whole interview committee. Thank you. This is amazing. Like I said in my goodbye letter to my current district, and I'm saying hello to you. I do take community very seriously. I take positivity and laying that foundation of really creating a positive learning environment as absolutely a priority. So I'm thrilled that you saw that in the interview, because that really is something that I hold very near and dear to the work I do every day with children and with staff and with families. I knew from the first time I met Dr. Freeman, when we met, I just felt what I even felt tonight as people were coming in, the warmth of the community, and just, I mean, to see this many people here supporting and the round of applause you received, this is where I need to be. I felt it during the first interview, the second interview even more, and on the third I drove home just keeping my fingers crossed, but making sure I was watching I-95 traffic. I cannot thank you enough for giving me this opportunity. I am beyond excited, and yes, we are in the middle of August, but I am going to do my best to ensure, as my letters go out tomorrow morning, I'm so excited that some staff members and fellow administrators have joined tonight, and we have some parents here tonight. I'm excited to introduce myself and welcome myself to the community. And yes, we only have a couple of weeks to do that, but I am very confident that we are going to, as he shared, I feel already welcomed in and part of the administrative team. So look forward to the administrative work we're going to do next week as we really hit the ground running and get these schools open and get these beautiful children back in the building.
And Natalie just reminded me, anticipating the board's approval tonight, and with your approval, should we receive it tonight, Natalie's current school district and superintendent have been enormously gracious in working with us. She has been made available to join the administrative team for both days of retreat next week. And we have scheduled the first day on ground in Cox Elementary School of August 23rd with your approval. So enormous appreciation to ER9 for working with us and recognizing the importance of having a new principal in her school in order to open it on time and open it properly in September.
They didn't have to do
They did not have to
No,
do that.
no,
We owe an enormous debt of gratitude to ER9 for working with our schedule and understanding the importance to the Cox community. Absolutely.
Natalie, if you don't mind, we may have a board member too, would just like to ask you a question or two, if we
absolutely.
could, and learn a little bit more about you. So I want to open to my colleagues, if you'd like.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank
So
you.
good- So glad you're here. I noticed in your vision statement, a strong statement about social emotional learning. And I was hoping you could talk to us about the importance of social emotional learning, specifically on education, and why it's beneficial.
Absolutely. So yeah, this is absolutely my passion. To me, for not only the children, but the adults in the building, there has to be that positive climate, that positive community that people come into. Research shows, and it's just pretty evident, when we feel good about what we do and we feel good about where we come into each and every day, and we feel supported and valued and trusted and loved and cared for, we tend to do better at the work we do each day. And that's how our children respond to. And so I've often been asked, well, when do you do social emotional learning? And it's not when, it's how we do it. And it's every single day. It's walking in with that positive attitude and that growth mindset and that ability to think positively about the day ahead. We all come to work every day with things on our mind and situations that we're handling. But for us to come in and support the students and the families in the way that we know best. And then my job as the principal, I need to ensure that my staff feels the same way. So I am really big on creating those relationships and building that foundation so that the staff too feel safe and comfortable, willing to take risks, willing to ask questions, willing to engage in conversation, and always knowing that they're going to be able to trust and engaging in those conversations with me. So really, it's not one program or one resource. It's really how it's done. And it's every day, all day. It's talking the talk, it's walking the walk, it's ensuring that we are sticking to those values of making sure that when the children and staff and families come into that building or any of the buildings in the district, that it is a positive, fun, community to come into to learn and grow.
Thank you.
Other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Tim.
As you look at the start of the school year, as Dr. Freeman has indicated, this isn't going to be a normal start, although it's hopefully going to be a lot better than last year. But what particular issues do you see as the principal of an elementary school with students not being vaccinated? What particular issues do you see about opening up?
So I remember Dr. Freeman and I spoke about this too. I am so excited to meet the families, and we're doing it outside because I want to see those children and I want them to see me. So again, I mentioned with the SEL piece, relationship building is going to be huge, so that even when these little tiny friends come in with their masks on, and last year at this time, we were all saying, oh my gosh, there's no way children are going to keep their masks. They are amazing. They do it, they're compliant, and it's not done like, oh, okay, I'll put it on. They have gone through the process with us. So for our newest friends coming in, recognizing that there is a human being under that mask is really important. We had a lot of our staff wear pins with their pictures on it last year. We all had the lanyards on to ensure that the kids could really see who the adults are behind, especially for our newest 5-year-olds, 4 and 5-year-olds coming into kindergarten. and ensuring that the protocols that are in place, that were in place last year that worked, and I noticed Dr. Freeman shared some things that we're going to be able to back up a little. Constantly watching those. And that's me walking through the building. That's engaging in conversations with the staff. What's working? What do we need to do more? Where might we have some issues? And also, I know we talked about the social worker, ensuring that if there are going to be maybe those worries that the children or the staff or the families have. And again, listening to those concerns. So some of the things that I think are going to be important, especially as the weather is nice before we have our 3-foot blizzard, is making sure the children are getting outside, that they're able to, as Dr. Freeman mentioned, engaging in that play outside. I feel that the social interactions for our youngest friends are absolutely crucial, especially given a time that they've had over the past year and a half. So I think that's going to be very important as they learn how to find each other and form and develop those relationships. And then again, walking the building every day. What is working? What's not working? What do we need to shore up? And engaging in conversation with my administrative colleagues. What are they doing in their buildings? If I see something that we might have a little bump in the road, or there might be a question in the community. So again, I know we talked a lot about this during the interview process, but when we talk about things, we tend to be good problem solvers together. So I think engaging in the conversations with the board, with the administrators, with the families, with the staff, and with our littlest friends. Because sometimes they have thoughts and ideas on their mind that we might not be thinking of. So important that we engage with them.
Thank you.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. I think some of the things that make Guilford, or one of the things that makes Guilford so special, especially in the elementary schools, are the PTOs. They're very active. I enjoyed being on it. I know that they've brought things such as brand new playgrounds to most of the schools. As they support teachers with school supplies and countless other things for the kids. And I note that you have something in your resume where you hosted conversations with the principals at your PTA here, with PTO meetings. Can you just comment a little bit about your relationship with PTO?
Absolutely. So we met every 2 weeks. I met with the executive board. We would engage in conversations about what was coming up, programs that they were planning to run this past year, just of course looked a little bit different. We didn't have as many of the in-person programs and opportunities, but we did some virtual, like Billy Bean, I think his name was, he came and met the kids virtually for an assembly. So we found creative ways to still have the kids engage in activities. So I did meet with them bi-weekly. We would go over plans. They did, programs for diversity and equity from their perspective. They came in and they worked within the building to again, bring those cultural programs to our school. And then the conversations with the principal every month at the PTA meeting. 2 years ago, it was in the morning. And then in order for families to be able to join virtually, they did it in the evening this past year. I would join, and whatever was on our minds during that time, whether it was testing coming up or COVID protocols and things shifting and changing, or policies that have changed, or just giving kind of a root cheer for everybody. I would always start off the meeting after the president opened up, and I would engage with families regarding kind of what the hot topics were at the time. So those were identified as conversations with the principals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Natalie. John. I'm a proud graduate of AWCOM. Really, no, what I'm looking to learn is our incoming kindergarten. What's going to be different when they graduate in 4th grade? What is your vision for Cox?
Again, I'm going to keep going back to the positive climate. I want those children to graduate and not only see me allowing them to transition up into the 5-6 school, but for them to say, I loved my elementary school experience. I loved being a child. I loved feeling valued. I loved feeling in a community where I could, as I shared before, take risks and engage in conversations with my friends, and recognizing, and actually, if I may speak about it, when they showed me the video, I was amazed by the children in the video engaging in very polite, I'm going to call it debate, but it was the children were engaging in a conversation about an article, and the children, you knew the community was a solid one, because the children would say, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure that and we're talking fourth graders engaging in this debate and this conversation. So children who feel comfortable and successful and proud of their learning and who look back and say, I loved being in that school for those 5 years. And I hope to bring them through. Those friends who come in this year, I hope in 5 years to be there to do that stepping up or a graduation ceremony, whatever we call it at that fourth grade level in Guilford, to send them off and on their way and prepared to become more independent learners along the way. So yes, there is a little bit of that hand holding and nurturing and getting them used to school at the very beginning, but really having them leave as proud, independent, and successful and ready learners, ready to take on the middle school experience.
Anybody else? Just a final question, and I think you've expressed it throughout a number of your answers tonight, but your leadership style, how would you briefly characterize your leadership style?
I'm going to start off with fair. I'm going to and fun. I am in the hallways. I am with the children. I am in the cafeteria. I go out to the playground. I am down on the floor sitting crisscross applesauce. So one thing I will tell you, you will never see me unless I must. You'll never see me in a dress because I am on the floor. I'm walking around. And yes, tonight I have heels on, but I normally have my flats on because I want to be everywhere with the children and with the staff. Open. You know, and they'll see it when it's sent out tomorrow, but my letter's ready for tomorrow. I want an open door. I want them to come and talk. I want to get to know them as human beings as they want me to know. I want them to know me as a human being. I'm a real person with a family and loved ones supporting me just as they have. Someone who is approachable. And again, fair and honest. I hope to be someone that families and students and staff can trust. I stick to my word and I work hard. I definitely, I constantly, every day I get up and I'm excited about this opportunity. Every day I get up I'm okay with, we had this discussion, right, Paul, the drive on 95, I'm okay with that because I am that person who is prepping and brainstorming in the morning and debriefing and reflecting in the afternoon. So and I will do that every day so I can come in. Again, I shared earlier, boots on the ground, ready to go that next day. You asked the question about that SEL piece, coming in with that positive and ready mindset each day. So I know I
Sometimes you
said
might
a
have-
lot of words in there, but fair.
No,
I think
asked,
it's
it's
fair
perfect.
and honest and very open, very, I think, easy to speak to and approachable, I think would be
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This is as someone, and I think most of us on the board have participated in principal interview committees. This is a rigorous process. So I am grateful for my colleague Moira and for the rest of the committee that went through this. I appreciate your willingness to answer additional questions because we always love to hear more. And I am now going to ask for a motion to approve the hiring of Natalie Hammond as principal at Cox Elementary School. Is there a motion? So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome. Welcome to Guilford.
Natalie, Jason has contracts for you to sign.
okay.
Don't meet in the back.
Thank you all so much. And thank you to my audience tonight. It was a lot of fun.
Congratulations.
We have just a few more items to get through in the regular part of our agenda here. 9.3, we're being asked to act on budget transfers for 2020, 2021. As the financial year comes to a close, one of the things we need to do is make sure that our budget lines are covered. So I am going to turn it over to Ms. Trudeau for a minute. If you'd like to explain a little bit about what we're going to be approving here tonight.
Thank you. Yes, so our budget is broken up into 7 categories normally, and we cannot have those 7 categories be over budget. So what I am asking to do is, with the addition of the COVID expenses and operating transfers for dining services, we have 9 categories of our budget. Currently, 4 of them are showing over budget, so we need to transfer funds to the following categories: employee benefits, capital, COVID expenses, and operating transfers. We're going to cover those overages from the remaining accounts in salaries, purchase services, tuition, supplies and materials, and transportation. And that will put our budget in line with the amount.
Terrific. So there will be a transfer of $1,653,000 from the 5 salary lines you just named into the 4 requiring these additional funds. Again, this is something we did cover in the Operations Committee meeting just prior to this, but I will turn to my colleagues if they have any remaining questions. Go ahead.
No, I
Or
was gonna
comment.
make, I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
make a motion.
Oh,
that we-
terrific. Even better.
Yeah. I
Wonderful.
mean,
So
we-
that's,
We did cover this extensively in the Operations Committee, and so I would move to approve the budget transfers as outlined by Mrs. Trudeau.
terrific. That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, terrific. Next item 9.4, the special education transportation bid for 2020, 2021. So every year there are a number of individual bus runs for our special education students. And these runs are bid individually. So these runs, we have a list of, it looks like approximately 16 to 20 runs in front of us. The lowest bid is identified for each of them from 1, 2, 3, it looks like 3 or 4 different bus companies.
different.
4, terrific, thank you. The bus company that we contract with for our regular education runs, specialty transportation, does have the right of first refusal to these runs if they can meet the lowest bid that has been identified for the board following this work by the business office. Before we vote, is there anything I missed here, Mrs. Trudeau? All right, terrific.
I'd like to make one comment.
Sure.
It's important to note that these special ed bus runs are different from our regular bus runs in that the students often require additional support. In some cases, we're transporting a student in a wheelchair. In other cases, we're transporting a student who has to have a nurse along on the bus ride. I mean, there are various very specific requirements, and a regular school bus doesn't do it for most of these to accommodate the needs of many of these students. So these are very specialized runs, and that's why we put them out to a set of companies who specialize in this kind of work and have that kind of specialized equipment.
All right, so I am going to ask a motion for the following, and I'm going to welcome Mrs. Trudeau if I misspeak at any point in this motion. I'm going to ask for a motion for acknowledging specialty transportation's right to first refusal. We, the board, approve the award of the following lowest bidders for the special education runs identified, conditional on specialty transportation's decision to meet that lowest bid. All right, is there a motion?
Second.
Second, all right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No abstentions. All right, so that is done. Wonderful, thank you. 9.5, to act on recommendations from the policy committee. I'm gonna turn to Moira for this
Thank
item.
you, Dr. Valstraci. Well, in both our policy committee meetings and in our previous meeting, I brought forth the following items for to move forward and act on for the board. The first involves a policy number 5510, which is immunizations and vaccinations. Per Public Act 21-6, which was passed this past spring. It's an act concerning immunizations and repeals the non-medical exemptions in Connecticut. So this this kind of goes into more detail. This is simply the policy that will adhere to that act. So I guess in terms of the technicalities of it, I would like to invite any of my board members to ask any questions or any clarifications.
Nobody? Okay, so
Thank you.
just for the viewing community and
Yes.
for the people here, right? These are policies and regulations that were brought to the board last month.
Correct.
Which provides us a month to consider them, ask questions of our policy committee or administration. So it sounds like we have no questions on this item.
And just important to note again that this policy simply brings us into compliance with the
Right.
new legislation
Public Act,
related to
exactly.
school-based vaccinations.
Exactly.
All right, so I am going to ask for a motion for the acceptance of policy 5510 immunizations and vaccinations as updated.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Did you? want
Yeah,
to
I'll
do-
go through. So item
Okay,
number
terrific.
9.5.2 is the regulation 5510 for immunizations and vaccinations. This is a more in detail regulation, kind of spells out the policy revisions and the regulation revisions and the language that specifies, kind of what has gone into effect as of last April. And I'll just read some brief language for the audience. Effective April 28th, 2021, students in grades K through 12 with an existing immunization exemption based on religious grounds must have been enrolled in schools in K through 12 on or before the law's effective date and must have submitted a valid religious exemption prior to that effective date. But then it goes on to explain that students enrolled in pre-K as of April 27, 2021 at midnight and who present a valid religious exemption to the school by that time at midnight must then comply with this new immunization guideline and schedules as of September 1st, 2022. So essentially, this new regulation is going to phase out the religious exemption as of September 1, 2022, but it's giving families a little bit of time with their youngest family members to bring their immunizations up to date, give them time to do so with the guidance of their healthcare providers and meet the state requirements.
Terrific. All right, so we've been asked to then approve regulation 5510 immunizations and vaccinations as updated by the policy committee per state regulation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. Okay, and then one more.
Yep,
Margaret?
item number 9.5.3 is policy number 6411, which is about the planning and placement team PPT procedure. And this comes into play with any sort of special ed services that are sought out by a family of students in the district. And what this wants to spell out is, again, I'll read the language, which is important. Students receiving special education services under the Individuals with Disability Act, IDEA, remain eligible for such services up until their 22nd birthday or until they graduate from high school with a regular high school diploma, whichever comes first. And then it goes on to explain that, the parents need to identify that with the district and what they would prefer. It used to be to the age of 21, but the IDEA has recognized the need that some students may need beyond that age. And so it gives a little bit more time for the district to help with those services until they can transition to another program or their other needs.
All right, so we are being asked to approve policy number 6411, planning and placement team, PPT procedures, as updated by the policy committee. Is there a motion to approve this policy?
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that is unanimous. All right. Item number 10, reports of committees. The policy committee have anything else to report this evening?
No, just beyond that, our next meeting will be in late September, on September 27th.
All right, operations committee, Mr. Sands, is there anything else to report out of the operations committee meeting?
Yes, three things. For the month, we had favorable medical expenses that were down from the previous month. So that was a pleasant surprise. We reviewed a very busy summer construction schedule where things are going, projects are being undertaken at every school in the district. We are experiencing supply chain problems and delays in getting certain types of equipment. It's going to require continuation of some of these projects into the start of the school year. However, I don't believe that any of these are going to affect the actual operation of the schools. But this has just been a difficult summer to get equipment and supplies. And finally, we met with the new dining services director, who is very experienced and has really hit the ground running. And we have agreed that we will have a continuation of the free breakfast and lunch program for the 2021-22 fiscal year, as we had this past year. So
Terrific.
those are the highlights of the program.
Absolutely. Thank you. Curriculum Instruction Assessment Committee, anything to report?
No, we haven't met since May, but we will meet again in October 25th, 2021.
Terrific. Liaisons to town committees, any reports out of any of our town
Nothing as it
committees?
pertains to DOE.
Okay, no, all right. And lastly, liaison to the Learn Board of Directors.
No meetings in the summer, so we'll get back in September.
Wonderful. All right. All right, to our wonderfully present and very patient public who has joined us this evening. There is now an opportunity, if anyone wishes to address the board with a public question or a comment. There is a limit per our bylaws of 4 minutes. We strongly ask that you respect that tonight so that everyone who does want to say something has a chance to do so. I'm just going to remind people to be respectful in their comments. Remind people when they come up to give their name and address. Again, so that we can get that down for the minutes. And again, please note there is, I believe, a pad on the podium to write that down as well. If you have a last name like Balistraci, you really give minute makers or minute meeting takers a run for their money. So again, I welcome anyone who would like to address the board to come up. I would actually like to say one more thing. Please note again that if you have questions, if you have comments, there's certainly things that we can get back to you on. But we again want to make sure that this is a time that we're listening to people. So we're not going to spend a lot of time providing a lot of answers, particularly those that are going to require us to look into anything and get back to you, but we'll absolutely follow up. So again, if anyone would like to come forward, we invite you to do so. Yes, you may. While you're speaking, go right ahead. Thank you.
I read the article in the Courier earlier this week, and I was really disturbed about the.
I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
my name is Nate Pollock, and I live at 106 Russet Drive.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And I wanted to, I work at a church in Westport, Connecticut, a Unitarian church, and I'm the director of religious education for children and youth. And it's my value and my life goal, and also my work, to teach the children that are under my responsibility about diversity and being kind to others. And I just wanted to point out to all of us that who, like me, have white skin, that, well, I know that the issue is here about racism, but I wanted to just, if you would humor me, show you that racism does exist. And I went to the Big Y Guilford shopping center today, and I bought Band-Aids. They really only come in one color, and it's for white people. So if you're a black person, it really doesn't do a whole lot of good for them as for what it's supposed to be. And then I went over to the cereal aisle and I found Aunt Jemima. And this is a caricature of an actual slave who existed and lived. And you can still buy this in this grocery store. And I went and I found Rastus, who's on cream of wheat. You can still find this in your grocery store. And I found Uncle Ben. And all of these are symbols of a racist past that we've constructed over 400 years that really benefits people who look like me. And for us to really acknowledge that, it's sort of like an alcoholic acknowledging a problem exists before you can make any kind of, take any steps to kind of remove the construction that has been in place. So I applaud the Board of Education for committing the work that needs to be done to teach our children in this school district about diversity, because I believe that the only way to deconstruct this is through education and awareness. And that's all.
I'm David Malilla, 135 Mirror Lane. And I just want to say thank you to the Board of Ed for your leadership and what you have done, and particularly to our superintendent for being so upfront on this issue, and in spite of some opposition. Thank you.
Rachel Daniels, 55 Talcott Road. Hello, Dr. Freeman, Dr. Streethy, and Board of Education members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. And 4 children in Guilford Public Schools arriving 8th, 6th, 3rd, and 1st grader. For the span of several weeks, current Guilford residents and former Guilford Public School students signed their name to a petition. It was addressed to our elected officials and signed by 1,178 people. Many of the supporters are here at tonight's meeting wearing green, and it's wonderful to look out and see a sea of green. Let's first read the text of the petition. We teach our kids to be honest, courageous, and kind. We expect our schools to impart lessons consistent with those values. Honesty about who we are, integrity, and how we treat others, and the courage to do what is right. All kids deserve a safe, equitable, and inclusive learning environment. Every student, regardless of race, ethnicity, ability, sexual orientation, gender, identity, or expression, should be provided the opportunity to learn, free from discrimination, fear, or harassment. We support diversity, equity, and inclusion in our schools to ensure that every child's needs are met with well-trained and supported teachers and a curriculum that embraces our differences. We support age-appropriate lessons that improve outcomes for our kids by preparing them for success after high school in a diverse, complex, and multicultural world. Politicians and pundits trying to cancel our history, legislate what teachers say, and mandate outdated and inaccurate lesson plans. It says that talking about diversity is divisive. That is a lie designed to deny our children the knowledge that helps us unite across our differences. Along with the 1,178 signatures, we received an incredible number of comments, and would like to take a few minutes to share some of them here tonight. These speak to the support coming from people who represent the many parts of the Guilford community. Parents, grandparents, students, former principals, citizens of Guilford, and previous public servants, all speaking out in support of our Board of Education and their commitment to social justice work in schools. Just a few of the comments. Please continue to provide quality education and support equity within our schools. I appreciate all that you do for our kids in our community. moved to Guilford 13 years ago for the education system and sense of community. Those are parents of students in graduating classes 2015 and 2017. Another grandmother of a current GPS 6th grader and mother of 3 adults who went through the Guilford school system. I strongly support Dr. Freeman, the Board of Education, and the Social Justice and Inclusion Initiative. Another, I strongly support this work by the Guilford Board of Education. This is why equity in schools means that each student is given accurate and research-based resources to be a successful learner and respectful, knowledgeable citizen in a diverse world. Equity in learning benefits all students. I fully support the work of Superintendent Freeman, the Guilford Board of Education, and the faculty. I applaud their ongoing pursuit of academic excellence for all students. There are more comments to share, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm proud to live in a town where my fellow citizens speak up for what is right, and one where our elected officials listen and hear their voices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I will note that we
Thank
have
you.
received by email this morning. I see you giving us a paper copy, but we also
I got it
received
in
that as
PDF.
well.
Yes, we got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight as well. My name is Christine Ford. I'm at 57 Graves Avenue, and I am advising second grader at Wheat and fifth grader at Baldwin. I graduated from Guilford High School in 1997 and was so proud to be from this wonderful town that I came back to raise my own family here. I felt that I received an amazing education. It's one of the things Guilford is known for. And it was excellent, except for one very critical piece. I graduated without having a picture to follow. I didn't know the words Juneteenth, redlining, sundown towns. I really thought slavery was something that only happened in the South. I didn't know that not everyone can walk into a store and not be watched carefully, or that when you get pulled over for speeding, you can only worry if your parents find out. All I knew was my own experience. I wasn't pushed to consider how different it might be from others. I want better for my children. They will be Guilford too one day, and they must be empowered to be self-aware, to understand our complete history and how it still impacts us today. To be empowered to participate in the world and with the people around them without shame, but with eyes wide open. That's one of my biggest wishes for them and their generation. None of them will have real happiness or peace until there is justice, and there won't be justice until there is understanding. I know Guilford has come a long way in the million years since I graduated, and I applaud Dr. Freeman and the whole board's incredible work and bravery to push us forward. Still, though, there is so much more work to be done to prepare the kids for the future they will inherit. So following Rachel's comments, I'm going to read more comments from the petition. These are from recent alumni and current GHS students. The first one is from a GHS grad from 2003 who signed in support of equity work in Guilford. They write, "We are hoping to move back to town and want our children raised in an inclusive environment that values equity." Another, "I graduated from GHS in 2014 and strongly support this effort. The fact that this effort is getting any pushback at all in our town is proof that it needs to exist in the first place. Keep doing what you are doing for that." A GHS graduate from 2020. "In a town and school system that is not majorly diverse, it's especially important to focus on equity and inclusion. With that, there is a high level of privilege and diversity. Inclusive lesson plans can help to combat ignorance." Another, "As a current GHS senior, I hope that the Board of Ed continues to diversify our schools and curricula despite pushback from privileged people feel that their blissful ignorance is being threatened. We as students are meant to be educated about, not shielded from, the reality of history and current events so that we can become culturally aware of critical thinkers. I am a senior at Guilford High School. The allowed curriculum has expanded my knowledge of our nation's history, which includes both the good and the bad. As a student in all AP classes, I can vouch that the Board of Ed has done an excellent job aiding me and other students in our endeavors. This push to whitewash our nation's history is not only disturbing, but ethically wrong. I graduated from GHS in 2014. I wish that there had been more discussion of systemic racism and the inequalities that exist in our community, our country, and our world when I was in GPS. It's the only way to prepare students for the society they will enter as adults. Thank you all for acknowledging that. And then we have some comments from parents and family of students. Here's one from a parent of GHS class 2023. I'm a strong believer in our nation's founding aspiration of justice for all. To fulfill that vision requires an honest and factual reckoning of our history. Don't cancel our past, teach it, learn from it, and aspire to do better. I strongly support the Board of Ed inductive payment. Someone else wrote, my daughters received a first-class education from GPS. They are in the midst of a very positive college experience, in no small part due to their experience here. I trusted their education to the outstanding teachers and administrators, and I have never had any reason for that trust to be questioned. Facts are still facts in Guilford. I have a 3.5 and 7-year-old in the Guilford school system, and I think it is vital to include this content as a part of their education. The importance of diversity and the value of appreciating and understanding different backgrounds is something we've always tried to instill in our children. We would applaud a school system that further supported this mission. My kids are graduates of the Guilford school system. I feel like the school system really moved the ball forward in inclusiveness for the special needs community in particular. Although we no longer have kids in the system, I am supportive of efforts to, again, move the ball forward towards historical honesty and racial justice. The right thing to do. Dr. Freeman and our incredible board, thank you for everything that you do. For leading, for listening, for being brave, and for being on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, everyone, we're now at 432 Old Whitfield Street here in Guilford. I know you've heard from me before, but I'm here tonight with Mrs. Daniels and Mrs. Ford to share some additional statements from Guilford citizens from the same petition in support of equity and social justice in the Guilford Public Schools. As a resident myself, who chose this town for so many amazing reasons, it is very consistent to me with the community that we are, to see the kind of support from both families of GPS students, as well as truly from everyone here, and I thank you so much across the board. These are fellow citizens who want to see children educated in a way that promotes equity and inclusion. So, rather than share just my own personal opinions, I would like to share the following 13 comments representative of the Guilford citizens that were submitted in this petition tonight. First, initiatives described in this petition are essential and long overdue. When honest discourse and sincere efforts to examine and reflect upon our history and its legacy are met with reactionary rhetoric, disinformation, and hysteria, it only proves how woefully behind we are in tackling these challenges. Much damage is done when mythology is allowed to supplant history in order to preserve power. Next, there is a well-funded nationwide campaign to rile up racial anxiety among whites. And I'm simply embarrassed this campaign has found purchase in our town. The fact that there is a backlash against Guilford schools trying to encourage racial equity is proof that the school's efforts are deeply necessary. Someday we will get behind this ugliness, partly thanks to efforts like those in our schools. Next, I support Dr. Freeman and a collaborative civil Board of Ed who has our students' best interests in mind. I support raising citizens who care for their neighbors and think outside of themselves. Thank you, BOE. Next, please continue the good work, BOE. We support you. Do not listen to the naysayers. Culturally responsive teaching is the right thing to do. Next, I have been a resident of Guilford for 43 years and support real truth in education that creates understanding, kindness, compassion, and courage to heal the divisiveness within our community and our country. Next, I am 70 and moved to Guilford in 2014. As a writer and former teacher, as a mother of 3 and grandmother of 1, I wholeheartedly support this effort to teach actual history in our schools, and to promote an open, safe, and honest exchange among students, faculty, and staff. Next, equity in schools means that each student is given accurate and research-based resources to be a successful learner and respectful, knowledgeable citizen in a diverse world. Equity in learning benefits all students. I fully support the work of Superintendent Freeman, the Guilford Board of Ed, and the faculty. I applaud their ongoing pursuit of academic excellence for all students. Next, as a person of faith, equity is paramount to my belief system and basic human interaction. I support our schools teaching history and preparing our children to foster a kind and just world. Next, as a retired principal in the Guilford Public Schools and a resident of Guilford, I am appreciative of the excellent leadership of Dr. Freeman and fully support the good work of the Board of Ed members, admin, faculty, staff, as they help students learn and grow into aware, productive, and caring adults. Next, I fully support the work of the BOE and Dr. Freeman in the ongoing work of honoring diversity in its many forms, recognizing the contributions that all people can make to improving our society and standing up to hate and cowardice. What better lessons can we teach our children? Next, how can it be that we need a petition to convince people that teachers should teach the truth? Admitting that injustice occurs is the only way to prevent it from continuing to happen. Teaching our children equity is teaching our children justice, compassion, kindness, and humanity. It is critical to the survival and thriving of our society. Next, I wholeheartedly support the Guilford BOE in its courageous and principled stand for equity and inclusion in our public schools, as well as the teaching of our shared American history in all of its well-documented dimensions. And I thank you for listening to the last. I support diversity, equity, and inclusion. I support education that gives students age-appropriate lessons in our history related to these issues. I support ethics, compassion, and responsibility to students related to these issues and all others. I support giving students socially responsible tools and means to achieve diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, I'm vastly outnumbered here. Bill Maisano, Jefferson Drive. Let me start out by saying I'm pretty good at working with people with opposing viewpoints. My wife probably makes the people with the green shirts look like Reagan Democrats. So my household, I'm constantly in this flux of working things out, and I always try and do that. I have to bring up the caucus because I think that's important. We just recently had the Republican caucus. The three.
I'm gonna add, I'm just gonna, no, please, excuse me, if I may.
Oh,
No. I just want to make clear to everyone that this is a Board of Education meeting, and if you would like
These are
to.
board members.
Excuse me, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make clear so that everyone is aware, this is a Board of Education meeting. And everyone and anyone is welcome to comment on Board of Education matters.
It is.
We are not going to be talking, and this is not a place to bring up election matters or campaign matters.
I'm sorry, but this is a Board of Education matter.
Okay,
All right.
if it is,
It
excuse
is.
me, yes, but please, I'm just asking for respect. That,
So am I.
Mr. Maizano, I'm going to ask you to just let me finish. I just want to make sure that everyone is clear so everyone has the same understanding. That this is a place where you can bring Board of Education matters, but not election or campaign matters. Thank you. I'm sorry to have interrupted.
Okay. I don't see what everybody's so afraid of. The three were defeated. Resoundingly. However, the three-headed Hydra raised its head. I'll name the names: Mr. Bishop, Mr. Hartman, Mr. Dudley, and Mr. Galino jumped right through the hoop.
Mr. Maizano, I'm going to again ask you to stick to Board of Education matters, Guilford Public School
matters,
You're talking about
curriculum
Board of Ed
matters. I know you were
candidates.
asking, you were talking
Candidates.
about election and campaign matters, and I am going to respectfully ask you to refrain from discussing those. This is a Board of Education
Yeah, it's
meeting.
just important
and
that
we
the town
welcome-
know We'll have to beat them 3 times now.
This is not the place for that discussion. This is a place for discussing Board of Education and Guilford Public School content
Okay,
matters.
So we'll go to that. I'll go around the board. I'll start with Mr. Freeman. Mr. Freeman, I know you go out use $6,000 to buy copies of How to Be Anti-Racist. I've read the book. I'm just wondering, it's a quick question, what kind of research? Do you agree with Mr. Kendi that capitalism is racist? That is in the book.
This is ridiculous.
This is, okay.
He bought it for the school staff. Why is that not an appropriate question? for
Mr.
the Board of
Maisano,
Ed?
I just have to interrupt you. I think that Dr.
You
Ballas-
didn't even read the book. I asked you.
Excuse me, if you could let me finish, please. Dr. Balistraci started the public comment section that we would be listening to comments. We're not going to be taking direct questions or answering
It's
direct
important.
questions at the
Why
meeting.
don't we have a right to answers?
But
It's
the
an
the
easy
forum
question.
clearly says it's comments.
Oh,
It's not a
God.
question and answer.
Listen, obviously you didn't read it. You told me you didn't. So did you, Mr. Sands.
Well, I have subsequently read.
Oh, you have? Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Because we asked you for a long time too. I could ask you the same question, but I suppose I'm not allowed to do that either. Because you don't feel, any of you, we've emailed you a bunch of times here. I want to, I'm trying to be polite. You never. Yeah, I can, it's hard. It's all the green that's like.
It's Guilford
Guilford green.
Guilford.
Listen, I get it. I am conservative and I am vastly outnumbered. Here's the thing, okay? Maybe you can all agree on this. You can shout me down, you can dislike me. I have no dislike for anybody. You can think whatever you want. If you want to teach your kids.
Folks, let's all show civility here, okay, everybody?
We
Please.
can't, we can't really have comments from the audience, okay? Just out of respect. for the
I
speaker.
expected to be attacked, actually, because that's what happens when you have a differing opinion. But I'm all about it. Here's the thing. When it comes to issues about morality, that is the job of a parent. Teach your kids whatever you want to teach them. Let me teach my kids in the way I see fit. It is not the job of a public school to take away my right to do that in the way I see fit. I am not begrudging anyone in here wearing your Guilford green. I don't have your hand up. I'm not like gonna call on you. But I don't get it. This is what's so confusing to me. Why can't someone respect my right to teach my kids the way I see fit with moral issues? I don't send them to school to get morality. I do that myself. I take them to church. That's where they get those values. Not from a teacher, not from somebody, an administrator who has an agenda. Mr. Freeman, I'm glad you got your contract. I really am. But I don't honestly expect to see you in more than a couple of years. I think you have higher aspirations. Guilford's kind of too small for you. You have too much talent. You're a good talker. So I don't see you around very
Mr.
much.
Mazzano, I'm not going to sit here and tolerate you
Oh.
talking down to our administrators or anyone here on the board. So if
Okay,
you
well, I
have
could learn very well
content,
from you how to do it.
if you have content
Your time's
to
up.
comment
It's
on,
time to move on.
then feel free. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you to finish your
Okay,
comments.
I will finish. Can you just tell me why I don't have the right to teach my child the way I see fit?
You are
Why the school thinks they have to take it upon their shoulders? Is that it? Is that a simple question? Why can't that be answered?
This is only comments.
See, yeah, I'm getting advice from the peanut gallery out there, but you guys won't tell me anything.
Mr. Maizano, we have question and answers on the website for some of the questions that people may have about the work that's being done in the public schools. We have talked about it at a number of Board of Ed meetings and will continue to talk about it. people who have specific questions about this work, please reach out to us. We are more
I
than willing
do.
to
I
answer
get
those
no
questions.
answers from anyone.
Mr. Maizano, I'm happy to give you some of these answers. I am going to ask you to finish your comments for this evening so that other people can get up and speak.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to present to the board?
My name is Marian Miller. I live at 1131 Middle Meadow Road. As Mr. Freeman knows, we'll be here forever. Not tonight, I mean, like me and my family. Have a long time relationship. We'll be here forever because I have a 3-year-old that still has to go through how many years? 18, I don't know, 15 more years I'll be here. I'm really sorry about what just happened. I just want to say that going to what we're talking about, teaching our kids, I'm as a parent, I love my kids, but I don't think I spend 24 hours with them to be able to teach them anything. I think that my kids spend about 8 hours in your hands, and I don't think that you're doing anything wrong with teaching my kids about history. My daughter, who was in 8th grade last year, had an amazing social studies class where she was able to learn about slavery that happened in our town, and I think that is important for her to know. Me, myself, I know you look at me, and if I don't speak and I don't say anything, you think I'm white, but then I open my mouth and I have like this huge accent. I know I'm not African American or Black or anything like that, but I feel like racism and history has to be, and diversity has to be teaching the kids about everything. It cannot just be talking to the kids. I think we're focusing right now on the African American community, but I feel like we also need to focus on the all the other races. I feel like I'm outnumbered all the time when I'm here because I know I say Latina, but now that is not politically correct. We need to say Latinx and people, so people don't get offended, and all these politically correct things that we need to do. So I always feel outnumbered because I know in our town there aren't that many Latinos. Probably I know most of them because maybe there's like 12 to 15 families, or maybe there's more that I haven't gotten yet to know, to meet. But I feel like there's also like kids try to be funny, and sometimes adults try to be funny, and they think that comments that they make to you are funny, and sometimes they really aren't. Sometimes you just like let them think that they're being funny so they don't hurt you, but some of the things that people can say to you are really hurtful. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with teaching our kids about history. And I actually didn't came to talk about that. I just got really upset about what happened, and I just wanted to let you know that I feel like the 8 hours that you are with our kids, I would appreciate it if you teach my kids to be kind and respectful to others, and teach them about history, and we teach them where we come from and all the things that you do for them. In my house, our motto is we need to be respectful of everybody. Like, you don't need to be friends with everybody, but you need to be respectful with everybody, and that's the way that we live. Like, I know my kids don't like some kids, and I said you don't need to be friends with them, just respect them. That's how we live. And I'm probably going past my 4 minutes or something. But the one thing that I wanted to add that has nothing to do with the wearing green is for the kids. I'm gonna be one of those parents that want the cohort C back, because I don't feel like we are all vaccinated in my house, and I feel like until we don't have vaccinations for the little kids, I would really appreciate if we can think more about it. I know that it's not going to be a recommendation, but I don't know if that's something that we can talk about for other kids. I am afraid of my kids getting sick, and I know some parents would say, well, it's just like a little cold, and it's just gonna be like this and something like that, and they're gonna be sick for a couple of days, and then it's gonna be gone. And for a lot of kids, it is like that, but for a lot of kids, it isn't. And you really don't know how bad this virus is gonna hit your kids. And I am afraid for the consequences of the future of what might happen to my kids if they get infected. And I was wondering if we don't have a cohort C, I don't know if the school gives like the stipend for each kid back to the family so that we can provide them a tutor or do something at home if we're not gonna have the cohort C or anything like that. I know there's other towns and other states that do that. Like if you don't wanna send your kid to public school for whatever reason, they will give you the stipend for the kid and then you can use that money as you see fit.
Dr. Beltran, the tape is just ended. Mary, I'm sorry, the tape for GCTV has just ended. We need to replace that tape.
We just,
Do I
yeah, so we need
repeat
to.
everything?
No, you didn't. I wanted to stop you before you kept going.
That's exciting.
Nine out of 10 times, Mary, it ends while I'm speaking, so.
I say you from that.
This doesn't count against your 4 minutes. by the way.
Well, I think
We
Yeah.
were
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
at 4
Yeah, no,
minutes,
we're
so
at
4 minutes.
So,
so
but when the tape comes on, I can move. You get to just stand there. I'm very sorry.
Am I still on YouTube?
All right, thank you. So, again, I'm sorry, did you?
I was gonna say, I know I just asked a question and we were supposed to only say comments, so I don't know how to rephrase it. to
We
be a
can-
Comment, but.
Yeah, I mean,
I can
Send me
get
an
back to you.
email.
we can get back, yeah, we will get back to you, absolutely.
And then, I guess I had another question, but, I wanted to know if, at some point we can start the talk about the world languages back in school. I know we haven't started it here, but I knew you knew it was coming from me, that I really wanna keep the kids with more world language. And I know, there was, I think Mr. Sands and I were gonna start something about it, but I'm still not sure when that will happen. So
Okay,
that was my last.
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Chairman. 107 gone. Right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anti-racism, Black Lives Matter, and pro-life all have one thing in common. They seek to end debate with their names rather than start it. If you're not anti-racist, you're clearly racist. If you're not for Black Lives Matter, you're against Black lives. If you're not pro-life, you're pro-death. Demagogues, the opposition. You're espousing an open and honest debate in schools. And I believe that's an admirable thing. I think history should be taught, the good and the bad. I think all of us believe that history should be taught, both the good and the bad. But eliminating either one of those does an injustice to our students. Given the verbiage that you're using, what's been said previously at this forum, that systemic racism is not debatable, and that if you're not proactively anti-racist, if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. Given what the papers, the first selectman, the Human Rights Commission have been saying regarding all those who oppose both your premise and your solution, the civility that has been lacking the last month, the students in your schools are more capable of handling these vast problems of
treating each other better than we treat each other. How can you ensure safety and freedom of speech and the freedom of ideas of the kids who disagree with yourselves? When you yourself seek to shut down by the verbs and the words and the arguments you use, when you only present one side of a debate, when you present Kenny, and Margaret Haggard, and Rob DeAngelo, and Lee Tittle, who supports all of those, and Dr. Seiler, they all feed one side of a debate. How do you expect an honest and open debate with everybody, including the minority views here in Guilford? The minority opinion counts. Those students have just as much right to an education as the liberal majority. Their side is unrepresented entirely in what you've given to your coaches, to your administration, and to your teachers. That concerns me greatly as a parent. I want to challenge you to make sure that both sides of the debate are represented, because so far they are not. Speaking of debate, my understanding is that there's a critical race theory forum tomorrow night. I believe you were in the background when the selectmen announced it. I'm not sure if that was a stock photo or if it was current, but so far, and I encourage that debate. I hope you all attend it, not debate forum. Because open and honest dialogue is the way forward for our town. I think it's a step in the right direction to discussing what we mean when we say equity and social justice, rather than kind of ish fighting about it. However, as a board, so far you've dismissed that CRT has anything to do with schools. And so I'm curious, and I hope you give me an answer on this. Is there enough overlap between the ideas that are going to be presented on CRT tomorrow and your focus on race in the schools that will be discussed tomorrow at a town forum will merit the parents' attention? Is it worth tuning in to see what's being taught at schools, or since that's separate, it's not worth it just as a concerned parent?
We'll have to wait.
No, that will have to wait. I can't answer that. I just want to make clear that what is being presented tomorrow is being presented by the Guilford Human Rights Commission. It is not being presented by Guilford Public Schools. We are not connected with that presentation, so that's what I want to make clear.
The reason I ask is because the newspaper had Superintendent Freeman standing behind the selectmen as he made the announcement.
That was a stock photo. That was a stock photo.
Yeah,
That was not a, that was not a.
Right, that's why I want to know as far as that goes, but as a parent, will I be learning about what's going on in schools if I attend that event?
It's not our event.
Okay.
My name is Clarissa Sahara. I am one of the founding members of the GHRC. So yes, that is our event. We are having it tomorrow. It is an educational event that, we saw the need to it from the community, and so we decided to have the Honorable Angela Robinson come back. She is a professor.
Sorry, can you just tell us your address for the. Sorry, we're asking everyone. I have to ask you too.
I know, it's given the rhetoric here, it's really uncomfortable for a person of color. I am concerned about my family's safety.
Okay, then I'm going to just ask you then to just
Please just
continue
write
your
it down.
comments, please. Yep.
So, yeah, so, she is a retired judge, and she is a professor at Quinnipiac University. she teaches a course in CRT. She gave us a brief overview. She was willing to come back despite the threat that somebody in the 96% of Guilford emailed to her. She is just gonna give a more in-depth explanation of what CRT is. We encourage everybody to attend, and she will be willing to answer questions through the Zoom webinar format. So that's that. I'm gonna put on my mom hat now because I'm here now as a parent. You know, it's the one thing where, you know, I think one of the things that we can agree on is Martin Luther King Jr. was a great person. I have seen both sides talk about, you know, his philosophy, his ideology, his teachings, you know, and yes, we all want our children to be judged based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. So I would like to make a suggestion to the Board of Ed. If it doesn't apply here, I'll take it to the GHRC. But the King Center in Atlanta, Georgia has a pledge that is the Be Love Pledge, and they have an adult version and they have a youth version. And I think since everybody embraces Dr. King's teachings, I think it'd be something very beneficial to have us do as a community, as an example for our kids, and maybe even have them do it at, you know, during the Martin Luther King Day holiday. I mean, it's a simple pledge. I don't think it'd be indoctrinating anybody with pledge. So I think that is just an option. I'll leave this here. It's just the printout of the wording of that. And so I just want to give like just the other thing I wanted to say is that I've always admired all of your commitment to do better when you know better. And something that Professor Robinson taught us, the GHRC, is the importance to acknowledge stolen land. So I want to take a moment to recognize that no matter how long any of us have been in Guilford, the original protectors here are the Manapatuns people. And I want to applaud the collaboration that you guys have had as a Board of Ed. You know, up to this point, you have taken fact and data into account when making decisions that affect our community. And there have been many different emotionally charged decisions that you've made. From class sizes to the late school start, to the bus routes, to extra time for special, to, you know, the turf on the football field. It's just like, it's amazing that you have been able to find that working relationship. And it's good. And this is what we want. We don't want more divisiveness.
I'm so sorry, you're coming to your 4 minutes, and I do want to give other people a chance to talk, so I'm going to ask you to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, and I mean, and more specifically, more recently, of course, with the mascot decision and the precautions with COVID, like I was extremely stressed out with having a newborn at home and, you know, worrying with my kid coming home with the flu or much worse COVID. And, you know, thankfully, because of everything, it never happened. Like Leeds did really well.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up. Thank you.
That is.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much. Like I'm under all this pressure, I'm not writing fast enough. We could probably put that aside and let you speak and sign afterwards. That might be more efficient.
Maybe I'll do that. Hi, I'm Barb Hargraves, and I live at 284 Lambton's Way. I have two children who are both somehow going to be up here at the high school this year. I have no idea where the time went. But I am here tonight because I just wanted to say that I am in full support of the social justice and the racial equity programs that we're doing here in Guilford Public Schools. My youngest daughter just finished up at Adams. Shout out to Adams. Hey. I don't know how many people are aware of this. If you don't have children in the schools, they have a program at Adams, the Witness Stones Project. And a former teacher, he was a teacher at Adams when he brought the program to the schools. This is the kind of program that I feel that we need to encourage more of. We had more conversations this year. I think it was because we were able to watch the presentation on Zoom. It was made available, so I could see it. I haven't always been able to go. And the conversations that we had in that program in my own family was just incredible. I really feel that what that program did is it really allowed my kids to connect with one story of an enslaved individual who was here. Somebody else mentioned it tonight, but they didn't realize that we had enslaved people up here. It wasn't just in the South. Truthfully, when I was in high school, I didn't see it as that, I was like, well, that's your problem. That's not our problem up here because we're in the North. So I feel that our schools are doing such an excellent job in teaching our kids the full experience. And there's an expression, I mix these up all the time, so I'll apologize in advance. You can't know somebody else's experiences unless you've walked a mile in their shoes. And I feel that this is what the Guilford Public Schools is trying to do. We're trying to show our kids through education, through curriculum, that their experience is not everybody's experience, and that you need to be able to fully understand what the other experiences are so that you can learn from each other and so that we can really get to an acceptance and move forward. So I'm here just to say I support this. I'd like to see more programs like this, and I fully support what's going on. I also think that there's a lot of misinformation in the community right now. As a parent, I see a lot of what's going on with my kids. They don't tell me everything. That's as it should be. But I feel like the communication coming from the district is excellent. I mean, I get emails saying, hey, is it okay for your child to watch this movie that we may or may not be showing, at some of the schools for whatever reason? We get so much communication. I trust the administrators, the teachers, the staff in the buildings to be presenting this education and trying to help our children understand the different experiences out there. So I would just encourage, the Board of Ed members and Dr. Freeman and the rest of the administration, just keep pushing for the information of what is actually happening. I appreciate it. And just to the Board of Ed, I want to say to you guys, I am fully in awe of everything you guys do. The amount of respect that you show everybody here at these meetings is incredible. And I have been coming to these meetings fairly regularly over the last 6 or 7 years. I have never, ever once seen this as a political body. I've always seen you all. And I know that the members have changed and moved in and out, but I've never seen you as being anything other than focused on our kids and focused on getting the best education for our kids and bringing in top quality talent. So thank you very much for that. And that's
Thank
it.
you.
That's it.
Thank you.
You can sign. After you're done, you can sign.
Sign later.
Yeah.
Bob Harrington,
at 464 Granite Road. I have an 8-year-old at AW Cox, and in a couple years ago, another kid is going to be going there soon. And I hope it's obvious that I am a white man. My wife is neither of those two things. And so through her eyes and through the eyes of my in-laws, I have personally seen the reasons why we need the equity and social justice initiatives that the Board of Ed has put forward. I have personal experience as to things that affect her and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law. And one day soon, I hope won't affect my children. We were recently at a local Guilford event, and I was shocked to hear somebody nearby shout, "Hey," whatever the name was, to a friend of theirs, "White power, am I right?" I am grateful that neither my children nor my wife heard, but we were right next to them. And it just points out why we need all the work that you have been doing and how much ineffective some of it has been and how we need more. It's not a thing growing up. I grew up in Clinton, a couple towns over. It's not a thing that I have ever thought would affect me as deeply as it has. I can't help but see what my family goes through and know that a lot of it that I'm insulated from. It's hard, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, don't worry.
I'll speak. I speak loud, so my wife always tells me I'm yelling. So I'm gonna speak loud so the back room can hear me, but I don't mean to be yelling. That's not what I'm here for. My name is Sam Hahn. I'm a resident of 57 Cambridge Way in Guilford, and I wanted to address some of the comments that were made. It's not really about size, but throughout the evening. The first one is that absolutely, I disagree with the comment made earlier that morality should not be taught by the school. I think we all know what happens to societies when that's taken out. One of the things that we are very good as humans is ignoring the past, and that's why we end up repeating it so often. Morality is absolutely something I think we probably all agree that needs to be taught in schools, and it's really not just only up to the schools, but it's a partnership between the schools and the parents. And I think we can all agree here that one of the things that we all want is our children to be better than us. That our children become more advanced, they become better human beings, in whatever way you want to define that. And one way for that to happen is for them to be in a school system among peers, among educators, in a system that promotes open thought, open-mindedness, and tolerance. I just want to share a quick little snippet, something humorous, but is absolutely indicative of why I think discussions like this are very critical. Some of you may have seen, it was a big, I don't know, you want to call it viral, but the whole Matt Damon thing, right, with his use of the F slur. If you haven't read about it, you should. It's generated comments on both sides. But basically, Matt Damon, he's about my age. I think I'm a little older than he is, but I think he's a pretty cool guy. And he posted this thing where he said that, in kind of colloquial talk, he was using the F word. And his daughter basically educated him that say, hey, look, Dad, you know what? That may have been okay when you were a child. When you were growing up as a teenager, which it was for me also, it was kind of this thing that you just kind of said, F, this person's F, whatever. But, now it's really not really acceptable, socially acceptable. And she had a nice debate with him about that. And he basically said, you know what? I am really respectful of my daughter because she educated me. And she was able to change how I felt about that word. And now I've retired. I'm not using it anymore. Now, that may be an extreme example. And it's somewhat of a small example, but it's, I think, how we all can learn as a community. And I am grateful to the Board of Education for attempting to do these sorts of things it is difficult work. And I anticipate, further conflict coming down the road because, that's how things get solved. I do not want the Board of Education to be all unified all the time and be unanimous with all their decisions. We need you to have honest, open discussions, because you are our representatives and we're very appreciative of that. And the fact that the Board of Ed body is what it is, I think is fantastic. But again, the issue here, I think, is more an issue of tolerance, an issue of open-mindedness, and issue of morality, quite frankly. I think that's a great way of phrasing it. And I know I'm not supposed to bring up elections, but at the same time, the only way that this is going to change is in an election. So I encourage everybody here to look at what the elections are coming up for both the primary and general election, and to basically vote. for her.
Excuse me, yeah, I'm so sorry. We really can't talk about elections here. Thank you.
Are you asking my health record? No. Unless you have a health. Would you like me to leave? I have a health issue. I cannot wear a mask. I'd like to make a statement. Would the board like me to leave?
You can keep your mask up when you're speaking,
I can keep my mask off.
while you're speaking at the
Thank you.
podium.
My name is Danielle Scarpellino. The paper that's supposed to be here isn't here right now, but I live at 405 Andrew Lane, Guilford, Connecticut. And I want to thank the board again for allowing me to speak. I won't take long. I just want to touch upon tolerance and inclusion and all the fancy buzzwords that we're all using that I believe in. And I really would like an answer, and you don't have to give it to me tonight, but I really would like a response from everybody because this is a sincere question. So the petition that was signed tonight, it made it across my desk as well. Unfortunately, not in the manner that it was received by all of you. I have some parents sending me emails because they know I'm very vocal and they're asking for my help. So I am not a board member, you are, so I'm going to present to you what was presented to me. Children are receiving this petition that's going around. They're receiving it through their own means of communication. I have 3 children. All 3 of my children received this petition, but they didn't receive it to sign. What they received and what these other parents told me their children received were screenshots of the Truth in Education website and typed over it by a child. This is what the racist white FUC trying to take over the BOE believe in. Because apparently white children are taught to feel bad about being white. The next one. A screenshot of the petition. BOE meeting is at 7:30 on Monday. If you haven't taken the time to understand what's happening, if Scarpellino and the crazy F Republican candidates win the election, they can fire Dr. Freeman, our principal, and completely change our curriculum so that essentially white kids are favored and we don't learn about race and equality. This has been my concern since day one. Never has it been my concern that we don't teach history, that we don't teach about race, that we don't teach about real racism that does exist. The choices you made in teaching this is the mistake. This is going to divide our town. These are the children talking. These are the children communicating. You're not going to see these quotes and these comments on your petition. You're not going to see it, but our children are going to hear it, and they're going to see it, and they're going to live it. So it's either you agree with what the board is doing and with what Dr. Freeman is pushing forward, or you are a racist. I have been trying to say this since October of 2020. No one would listen. I'm asking you, please listen. Please, for the sake of all of our children, our Black children, our white children, our whatever, because not everyone, even Black Americans, are not on board with this direction. And you seem to not want to hear that.
People are speaking, and there is a silent majority that I keep reminding you about. They're hiding. They're in hiding, because you know what happens when they speak out? They get called a racist like I do. They get their business boycotted like I am. You get teachers, some of them are in here, that agree with the boycott of my business. My daughter has that teacher next year. How is that going to be handled? This is a mess in Guilford, and this is not made up. And if you don't want to believe it, time will tell. History will tell. And I'm sorry that I have to be so aggressive. I really am. I know everyone here is doing what they think is right. Everybody is. We all are doing what we think is right. But the difference is we are literally being called rape. That's like being called a murder. It's the worst thing you can be called.
No, it's not. We can't have comments from the audience.
You're not a bad thing to be called. Being a racist is not bad. In my opinion, if you're a racist, you're a drag of society. It's the worst thing you can be.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you, these are comments to the Board of Ed?
I'm sorry, I took the applause, just.
No,
you
no,
know,
no,
my
no, no,
attention.
I just
And
want to
the truth of the
refocus.
matter is, I'm a Republican nominee. I don't know.
No, we're not talking
no,
about
I'm
the
sorry.
election,
I'm sorry.
please.
I don't, I would be open, more open than the people in front of me to be listening. Thank you, I really appreciate that, Dr. King. Thank you. Because I know people see us as adversaries, and I'm not an adversary. I've never been. I've been trying to make everything exposed, because people see it the way I see it. They're just not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you, and you're going to self-censor these children. You will
Okay.
self-censor them.
I'm gonna ask you
My
to
time is
take
up.
time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you for hearing.
My name is Colby Cortese, and I'm a rising senior at GHS. I live at 1491 West Street. I often hear the phrase, "You won't live in Guilford forever." There's a whole world out there, and it's the role of educators to prepare us to be compassionate and understanding citizens of the world. We must be prepared to work in new environments with different types of people, and a curriculum that teaches whitewashed history wouldn't prepare us with the skills we need to thrive in the world. Some of the people in this community want to teach students that racism doesn't exist in our current society. It's simply a thing of the past, like slavery and Jim Crow laws. In truth, those things are not just the past, but affect our present. And acknowledging the past and current flaws of our country is not unpatriotic or anti-American. Denying systemic racism for white comfort is what's anti-American. It's our commitment to racial justice work that makes us strong and characterizes American spirit. And if the truth makes you uncomfortable, that doesn't give you a pass to deny it. Education is not meant to solely serve the interests of white students by lying about our nation's history and ignoring the issues that our nation faces today. Education is not meant to make white students feel comfortable at the expense of Black students or other non-white kids. By using school as an environment to create greater cultural awareness and inclusion, we help students with different backgrounds succeed. A diverse curriculum fosters acceptance and helps prepare students to thrive, especially in a time when teaching young people about race relations throughout history and the present is so important. By teaching young white kids to be colorblind, which is trying to be pushed right now, you teach them to ignore a cultural reality that leaves them ill-equipped to make sense of the conflicts and disparities they may see. They may fail to recognize that people come from all different backgrounds and experiences and lack the ability to be culturally sensitive to those different contexts. This colorblind approach negatively impacts their mood for equality and leaves people unable to see discrimination. The colorblind teaching approach only fails our students and makes them unprepared to be mindful citizens of the world. It forces non-white children to deal with an environment in which the harm they experience is not seen. We have to do better than fostering these things. I'm so proud of the progress we've made this past year, from the mascot change to finally having a change in narrative and history classes. We learned about Native American and Black pillars in American history. It was clear that Guilford was striving for more diverse and accountable approach to learning. I say we don't let that progress be reversed. I say we continue to be culturally responsive. There's always going to be people that stand in the way of positive change out of fear, no matter what it is. They use the way they were taught in school to justify continued teaching that way. What we can't do is cater to that fear. In doing so, we let people with outdated mindsets and divisive rhetoric take the stage. I'm proud of these members of the Board of Education who've dedicated time, especially this past year, to creating a more inclusive and an anti-racist school environment. Please continue down that path. Thank you for showing students like myself what real leadership is and what it means to fight for what's right, even in the face of a difference.
Thank you.
Hi, Amanda Harbonic of 123 Stoneboat Road. So first I want to say that I'm in full support of the Board of Ed and your efforts to ensure that students are receiving a quality and inclusive education. But that's not the direct focus of my comments tonight. So thank you for everything that you do for our students on all accounts. I know that this last year was really tough for everyone in the school district. The principals and the teachers went above and beyond to ensure that kids like my son were both safe and had a positive learning environment. So I thank you for taking the safety of our students into account as we begin this new yet still challenging school year. As mentioned tonight, masks are one of the best ways that we can keep our kids in school and in person. So I implore you to continue keeping best practice in mind, listening to the AAP and other leading medical organizations. With kids of my own that are too young to be vaccinated, I know that they could be one of those positive cases that we mentioned tonight in the schools and in the community. And we also need to know and be aware of the fact that kids with disabilities or kids with health conditions that make them higher risk are particularly vulnerable in these situations. And I do say all this knowing that everyone here wants to take steps to limit those cases. Because while kids seem to have better outcomes than a lot of demographics, we also know that there's children's hospitals that are currently filling up in some regions of our country. So we don't fully understand the long-term health impacts of this either. So I'm here to implore the Board of Ed to both advocate for and prioritize health recommendations, even in the absence of state or statewide or larger government regulation. We know that the presence or the absence of those mandates does not determine safe or best practice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the Board of Ed this evening? I just want to make sure that, is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who would like to speak? I would like to make sure we prioritize. Oh, okay, come on up, please.
After
First,
you
you can speak
you
first.
spoke.
Yep. Sorry.
My name is Jill, and we know I live at 48 Parent Court. I don't have a speech prepared, and the person I was going to talk to has left already, but I've been sort of thinking why the people who oppose the CRT are so upset. And I've been trying to figure it out, and I don't think they're necessarily racist, but I think they're worried that their kids are going to be sad to learn about what's happened in this country. That's the best I can figure out, is that their kids will learn facts about American history and will become sad. And you know what? That would be an appropriate response to learning what happened in this country and what's still happening. It's an appropriate response to be sad. And your kids may be sad when they learn about some of this stuff, and that's okay. We're not going to tell them, and it's your fault, you know, you did these things because they didn't do any of these things. So I don't know if they're trying to protect their kids from having a moment of discomfort, but I just want to say that I'm okay with my kids learning history as it happened and not as we wish it had happened. And if my kids are sad, then they can come home and talk to me about it. I can be like, yeah, that was really awful the way that went down. So anyway, I support you and thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kendall Svengalis. I live at 3 Rockland Road in Guilford. A lot has been said this evening. It's very interesting, and I find myself in an interesting position because I come from the background of someone who grew up in a majority black city, Gary, Indiana, which is now about 93% black. My classmates were, many of my classmates were black. We engaged in all kinds of activities together. I had great relationships growing up. I've written the history of Gary, Indiana. I've also written 2 vocabulary building novels that are directed at minority youth in particular, that teach vocabulary and cultural literacy. What concerns me is the politicization of education. And I don't want to see one side presented because it's very nuanced. And that's one thing we're missing. I support the complete teaching of history, all of it, good and bad. We homeschool my granddaughter, and we talk about all this. We talk about slavery. She's read biographies of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, Kirk Washington, and Martin Luther King. We go over all of that. I want her to know the full history of it, but I don't want education to be one-sided. What upset me was when I learned about the purchase of Ibram Kennedy's book and books by Robin DiAngelo, to the exclusion of other very thoughtful thinkers on the other side, on the right. Shelby Steele wrote a great book called White Guilt, how blacks and white liberals destroyed the civil rights revolution. It's a very poignant and thoughtful book. And what we don't understand is that there has developed, since the civil rights revolution, a divide between those that supported Dr. King's vision and those that wanted, as Shelby Steele points out, wanted to use race and white guilt as a way of extracting more from white society. And the downside of that is that it creates a sense of victimhood among blacks, which is not productive to their success. And that's one of the things that bothers me. That's why I'm a supporter of the Woodson Foundation, which Robert Woodson has been working in inner cities for years, supporting inner city youth who grow up in broken homes, those that come out of prisons, and tries to help them, rehabilitate them, and get them back into society. And he's totally opposed to CRT. And he just put out a great book dealing with that by 20 scholars. And there are a lot of downsides to CRT and its progeny. But the thing that concerns me is that this may not be presented, both sides are not being presented within the school system. And to buy those 2 books to the exclusion of the other sends a message to the faculty that is not appropriate. They should be hearing both sides. They should be reading books by Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams and Glenn Lowry and Brown, who's a brilliant economist and social critic. John McWhorter, you can watch them on YouTube. These are the kind of people you should also be listening to because it's a very nuanced and complex problem. You also have to recognize that these people like Woodson are dealing with the fact that because of the Great Society, and something that we should be teaching in schools is what happened after the Great Society legislation, welfare legislation was passed. The thing you have to understand is that from the late 19th century until the early 1960s, Black illegitimacy was actually lower than white illegitimacy. Most people don't know that. It has been described as the greatest advance by any group in history is what Blacks did from the post-Civil War period until the 1960s. The advances they made despite racism, overt racism.
Hey, I'm so sorry. You're coming to your 4 minutes, so I'm just going to ask you to wrap up your comments.
And just to say, I would like to see, and I was going to bring attention to the fact that there are ethical guidelines that promulgated, regulatory guidelines promulgated by the state of Connecticut that specifically require that both sides be presented. And I have some copies that I can present to you after this. And it's a part of the education environment in Connecticut that both sides should be presented. And I want to make sure that a nuanced, detailed history is available to students, and that those that hold opposing views, they're not racist, they just have a different view of the best path forward for minorities.
Okay,
I
thank you.
Thank you.
Um, okay, go ahead. Someone in the back. Well, oops, okay. Okay, thank you, sorry.
I wanted to comment on that in our country, there are now more than both sides. There is Republican, Democrat, Independents, Green, and Socialist. And I would agree with you that there's a lot of nuance in our country. And as someone who grew up in a school system that was diverse, yet embraced colorblindness, or a colorblind way of approaching speaking about race, I feel like it wasn't enough. I mean, and I also grew up in a Republican household. My parents are Republicans and Catholics. As an 8-year-old, I was taught by the church to teach the whole congregation about the humiliation of Christ. And so I think children can handle complex subjects, and I would have to agree with the Scrubs who spoke about how we should be teaching morality in school. And I just wanted to lift up this last, since we can all agree to read Martin Luther King Jr. I wanted to lift up this last book that I'm reading and invite you all to read it. I read the chapter entitled Racism and White Backlash recently. And some of the quotes that stood out in this book are the tendency of the nation to take one step forward on the question of racial justice and then to take one step backward is still the pattern. And then he goes on and he ends the chapter in a hopeful tone, and he says, the value in pulling racism out of its obscurity and stripping it of its rationalizations lies in the confidence that it can be changed. To live with the pretense that racism is a doctrine of a very few is to disarm us in fighting it frontally as scientifically unsound, morally repugnant, and socially destructive.
David Malilla, 135 Mirror Lane. I'm sorry to be here again.
I just want to make sure, David, thank you so much. I just want to make sure that people who haven't spoken have had a chance to speak. Do you mind if we just, I'm sorry. And then, yeah, absolutely. Thank
My
you.
name's Tyler Raggett, 274 Church Street. I just wanted to come up here. I actually made a mistake of going on Facebook a couple days ago. And I saw that there's going to be an anti-mask protest here, so I came here as a anti-mask protest. I just wanted to say thank you for all the habits you did in 2020, and for being conservative and reopening and making sure mask mandate stays in schools, and to be pro-vaccination. I just wanted to put my voice up and say that if you're inclined to be conservative on reopening, I would definitely be supporting that. So I'm just going to put that quick word in there, and thank you for everybody here.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who has not yet spoken who would like an opportunity to speak? All right, hearing none. Thank you. Sorry, David. Thank you.
I'm
for your.
still David Malone.
You're still.
I just briefly, I keep hearing CRT thrown around. My understanding, there is no CRT being taught. I mean, it's not even something that is taught on a public school level. And people want to keep hanging on to them. What we're talking is about history that shows that the full scale of our history, good and bad. And there is no CRT. And though I disagree profoundly, the people whose kids are getting picked on, we should extend ourselves to help those kids if they're being harassed or bullied. And all our kids can use to be, you know, a little more tolerant. Sometimes the woke stuff gets a little intense, especially on social media. So I think we do need to watch out for that, and otherwise there is no CRT. We're going ahead with something that's progressive. And if you're in a minority and that's been shown to you time and time again, eventually you gotta say, oh, I'm just not accepting what the majority want, and demanding my way. And I would hope that would be the end of it.
Thank you.
Did you, oh, you wanted to come up again?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to say, you know, the thing about Facebook is, the other thing about you guys is that, you know, I've never seen you guys on Facebook bully any member of the community. And that is something that I have seen from Danielle, who was here. And it's
I'm gonna ask that we not focus on individuals, but again,
Understood.
focus on content
Well,
of the
she
Board of
did-
Ed or
She
schools.
did point out the petition, the screenshots that were sent out to the youth and how the youth were writing out different things. The thing she failed to mention was that the screenshot was of the had a quote of Hitler, yeah, and on their Truth of Education sign. And so, I mean, that's just where I draw the line. You know, talk about transparency. You gotta own up to what you put out. I'm not trying to sound anti-white. I've lived in a lot of predominantly white neighborhoods. You know, but you know, before coming to Guilford, I was in Charlottesville, Virginia, and there is a lot of similarities between Guilford and Charlottesville. It's a very nice small town. It has a nice downtown area. A lot of the people go to work at a major university, and it's just. You know, it's just getting that vibe again about, you know, the sort of stuff that happened there. And it's not something I want to see. It's not something that is safe for anybody to do. You know, when we talk about teaching our kids, we want some inclusion, we want some true history, like Ruby Wheel. You know, we want representation, showing people that are from other countries, from authors from different points of view. When the PTO had a, you know, multicultural day, I was willing to share my culture with my son's classroom. I set up a Zoom call while the kids were there in the classroom with relatives in Brazil. I exposed them to culture, to things outside the world. They asked silly questions like, do you have a refrigerator? But you know what? It's something that they didn't know. Like, you just don't understand what the culture is outside of Guilford. And there's just so much more. And, you know, it's also, my aunt and her partner were the ones just showing different tropical fruits, like the avocado you got there. I mean, what's the ones here in the shape? So it's just like, and it's And it's infuriating because there has been so much hate crime going up. And my kids are multicultural. They are biracial. They are multilingual. And there is no place for candidates to sit on the Board of Education.
Again, we cannot talk about politics, please.
Right. Well, there's no place where quoting Hitler is acceptable. And that.
Thank you.
Very long. Just one comment, I heard a lot of people mentioning like both sides, and there's a lot of things that have different sides, but education is about teaching the truth. We don't teach the flat earth theory over, you know, like the round earth theory that's supported by science, and we don't, you know, teach creationism over evolution, and history shouldn't be any different, so I completely support what the Board of Education is doing, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the Board of Ed before we adjourn? All right. Thank you. No, we do. The Board of Ed does still have, that's right, we still have an executive
Oh, yeah, we
session.
can keep going.
So that's right. We still have a lot to do. I want to thank all the public for showing up. I want to acknowledge that there are folks tonight who had questions that we did not answer at this time in order to give people time to speak. We will get back to you on these questions. We are recording everything that people have asked us. We understand that there are people who have questions, all kinds of questions about what's going on, but certainly about the Equity and Social Justice Initiative. Again, there is a Q&A on the Guilford Public Schools website that has answers to questions we've already heard. You can reach out to the administration. You can reach out to any of the Board of Ed members. We try to get back to people in a timely manner, although I will readily admit that sometimes my inbox gets so full, I get behind. But we want people to know what we are doing. I think we feel like we spend a lot of time telling people what we're not doing in Guilford Public Schools. We are happy to talk about what we're doing and happy to say that there's a lot still that hasn't been done. This is an initiative that has only just begun, and that a lot of what's been going on in Guilford Public Schools has actually been going on for some time, and is not new, but we are happy to talk about it, happy to answer questions, happy to communicate to people who have those questions. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your involvement and your engagement. I am going to, because the Board of Ed still has an executive session, I'm going to identify that when we come out of the executive session, there will be no votes. There will be no more action taken by the Board of Ed except to adjourn. So at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to enter executive session.